Chapter 473. Jiang Yunyao's admission didn't make Cheng Yinluo happy at all. Instead, she looked more serious. Cheng Yinluo's reaction made Chu Qingyin's heart skip a beat. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became gloomy. Master Wu Yin, if you have something to say, just say it. I can bear it. I've given up on my illness a long time ago, so it doesn't matter even if I say something wrong. Jiang Yunyao smiled slightly, trying to comfort her. Ru Yu's eyes reddened. Princess, don't say that. Your fortune is in the hands of heaven. You will definitely get better. After saying that, she immediately turned to Cheng Yinluo. Master speechless, tell us quickly. What's wrong with our princess? Cheng Yinluo couldn't help looking at Chu Qingyan. There was some hesitation in her eyes. Seeing this, Chu Qingyan reached out and touched her sleeve. This was the secret signal they had discussed before, in case of an emergency. Cheng Yinluo's eyes flashed. Then she turned to Jiang Yunyao. Princess, can you ask your servants to leave? Jiang Yunyao was a little surprised. Before she could speak, Ryue frowned and said, Master Wu Yin, does the princess's illness need to be taboo? Is there anything that can't be said? Yes. Cheng Yinluo threw out these two words simply and rudely. Ryue had never seen such a straightforward person. She was suddenly choked by her words. At this time, Jiang Yunyao said to Ryue, ask everyone in the room to leave. Then she smiled at Chu Qingyan and others. Ryue grew up with me since childhood. She can be trusted. It's good to leave her alone to take care of the princess. Chu Qingyan nodded to Cheng Yinluo. Then Cheng Yinluo began to speak. Third princess, I made some progress on your illness. My initial diagnosis is... Cheng Yinluo paused as she looked into Jiang Yunyao's clear eyes. Jiang Yunyao looked like a nice and kind-hearted girl. She shouldn't have thought that someone would plot against her, right? But the truth was so bloody. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she had regained her composure as a doctor. She opened her thin lips and said, she's poisoned. Poisoned? As soon as he said this, Jiang Yunyao and her servant were both astonished. Ryue said excitedly, how is it possible? Who dares to murder our princess? Moreover, so many imperial physicians and famous doctors all said that the princess caught a cold and then became depressed, which led to her illness. Although it's a stretch to say that, it can explain the illness. But what kind of cold can't be cured after more than a year and a half? It's too far-fetched. Cheng Yinluo shook her head. Master Wu Yin, what do you mean poisoning? Jiang Yunyao had already calmed down. She stared at Cheng Yinluo with a serious expression, exuding the air of a royal princess. Chu Qingyan nodded silently. This Jiang Yunyao might be loved by everyone, but she was neither spoiled nor brainless. Instead, she treated people warmly and was calm in the face of trouble. Chu Qingyan gave her extra points in her heart. When no one was looking, Chu Qingyan nodded to Cheng Yinluo. After receiving Chu Qingyan's hint, Cheng Yinluo said, Third princess, your symptoms are similar to a cold, such as coughing and sleepiness. But these are only superficial symptoms. You're not sick, but poisoned. To be more precise, you're poisoned with hallucinogens. That's why you have nightmares at night. The poison isn't strong, but the hallucinogens can destroy one's willpower. It will slowly erode your body, causing it to weaken. When it reaches a certain level, She didn't continue, but everyone understood what she meant. I want to know how you got poisoned. The meals and utensils in the palace are checked and controlled. It's difficult to take advantage of them. Jiang Yunyao was puzzled. She had lived in the palace for more than 10 years. She was used to the palace servants around her. Moreover, her imperial father, imperial mother, and imperial brothers doted on and protected her. No one would have the chance to do anything to her. Cheng Yinluo replied, Your Highness, this poison is called death of loss. It means that a person will die unknowingly in a daze. The method of poisoning is very strange because it's produced by two completely unrelated substances. For example, the herbs you took to treat your typhoid, and she paused and pointed at the incense burner in the room. Spices. You mean to say that these two substances aren't poisonous, but when they're put together, they produce a slow-acting poison? Chu Qingyan deduced. That's right. Cheng Yinluo nodded. There's one herb that most doctors like to use to treat typhoid. It's peppermint. No matter where it's placed, no one would think that it would cause any harm. But if it's mixed with a special spice, the result will be different. It'll cause harm instead of healing. So the main problem lies with the spice? Jiang Yunyao asked, hitting the nail on the head. Yes. Cheng Yinluo walked to the side of the gold-plated incense burner and sniffed it. An expression of as expected surfaced on her face. She then turned around and said, "This spice has the effect of refreshing the mind. But if it's mixed with other substances, it'll spread in the air after it's ignited. The patient who drank the peppermint will be poisoned after smelling it. Because its symptoms are very similar to typhoid, they're often lumped together and cause the patient to lose the chance of treatment." "Then what's the matter with the hallucinogen?" Chu Qingyan asked, puzzled. Cheng Yinluo pondered for a moment, then raised her head to look at Jiang Yunyao. "If this humble nun's conjecture is correct, Your Highness's clothes should have been sprinkled with the powder of hallucinogen. You've been taking it day and night. That's why you're in such a deep sleep. If you don't believe me, Your Highness can take off your clothes and bring them to the Imperial Academy of Medicine for an examination." Jiang Yunyao lowered her head to look at her clothes. Her face paled slightly. If this person was right, then the palace she lived in was too terrifying. There were murderous intents hidden everywhere. "Then can our princess's poison be cured?" Ryua asked anxiously. The princess had been poisoned for more than a year. It had been too long. This was the question that everyone was most concerned about. Cheng Yinluo revealed a troubled expression. "The poison of Guang Wang hasn't appeared in the world for a long time. This humble nun needs to go back and check the medical books. But rest assured, Your Highness, this humble nun will do her best to find a cure." Jiang Yunyao nodded. "Thank you, Master Wu Yin." After sending off Chu Qingyan and her entourage, Jiang Yunyao immediately ordered Ryu, "Invite my imperial father here. Don't alarm my imperial mother first. Also, no one is to reveal what happened today." Ryue had never seen such a cold side of the princess. She quickly complied and then immediately went out of the hall to find the emperor of Jiang Kingdom. Chapter 474. Chu Qingyan and her entourage left the palace and boarded the carriage. "I didn't expect the third princess to really be poisoned. It wasn't an accident." Chu Qingyan lamented. She couldn't help but recall the time when Xiao Ran had delivered pastries to Big Ice Cube. If she hadn't eaten them by mistake, Big Ice Cube would have been the one poisoned. The imperial family looked glamorous on the surface, but who knew that it was fraught with danger and treachery? Cheng Yinluo could hear the disappointment in her voice and couldn't help but laugh. "Why are you sighing? You've been by Big Ice Cube's side for so long, so you should have seen this kind of thing many times, right? Could it be that your Big Ice Cube has protected you so well that you haven't seen a single drop of blood?" The dark clouds hanging over Chu Qingyan's head dissipated at her teasing. She rolled her eyes at Cheng Yinluo and went straight to the point. "How serious is the third princess poison?" Cheng Yinluo regained her composure. "If we hadn't appeared, she would have died in less than half a month." "Then are you confident that you can cure the poison?" Chu Qingyan asked. This was the most crucial question. "This kind of small poison isn't a problem for me at all. It'll just take some time." Cheng Yinluo leaned against the carriage wall. Her expression relaxed. Drag it out for 2 or 3 days. It'll make it easier for us to carry out our next plan." Chu Qingyan nodded. She felt as if the clouds had parted and the moon had seen the light of day. If the poison was easy to cure, it wouldn't attract the attention of Jiang Kingdom's emperor. They would only have a higher chance of obtaining the ice crystal flower if they created the impression that it was harder than ascending to heaven. Moreover, it seemed like only Yin Luo could detoxify this poison. To other people, it was just an incurable poison. They weren't exactly lying. Su Jian asked, "Benefactor Chu, is there anything I can help you with?" Although he knew that they knew how to cure the poison but chose to hide it, he knew that she had her own plans and didn't ask. Chu Qingyan immediately nodded and smiled. "Master, we need your help with something. The Emperor of Jiang Country will definitely know about the matter of the third princess being poisoned. When the time comes, he will summon us into the palace. I hope you can introduce us." With Su Jian around, they should be able to gain the trust of the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom faster and complete the transaction. That's not a problem. Su Jian nodded. Returning to Jingyun Temple, the two changed back into their own clothes. After bidding farewell to Su Jian, they returned to Yi Manor. Upon entering the Yi residence, Chu Qingyan immediately went to look for Xiao Su. When Chu Qingyan left the palace, she had already asked Xiao Lai to inform Big Ice Cube. At this time, everyone was already waiting in the study. As soon as they entered the door, Chang Yinluo told everyone about what she had discovered in Yang Palace. Miss Cheng, how confident are you in dealing with this poison? Xiao Su pondered for a moment and asked. 90%. Cheng Yinluo originally wanted to say 100%, but when she answered, she saw Murongju looking at her, so she changed her words. She didn't want him to think that she was a conceited person. She was still a very modest person. However, was there a difference between 90% and 100%? Today, the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom will know about the third princess' illness. The earliest he will summon us to the palace is tomorrow. When that time comes, we will bring up the matter of the ice crystal flower to the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom. If everything goes well, when the third princess recovers, we will be able to obtain the ice crystal flower. Chu Qingyan's lips curled up, revealing a confident smile. That's great. In this way, we can help the third princess detoxify and ask the Emperor of Jiang Country for the ice crystal flower. Mu Ling's face was full of joy. Not bad, not bad. Brother Xiao, your child bride is very smart. Her IQ is almost as high as your 10-year-old IQ. I admit that I am inferior to her. Yiling Feng closed his folding fan and smiled sincerely. However, his mouth was unforgiving and he took the opportunity to tease. You let me win. Although the words child bride made people want to roll their eyes, Chu Qingyan still cupped her hands and bowed like a man. Xiao Su slightly raised the corner of his mouth. It's rare for you to admit that your IQ is inferior to mine. Yiling Feng choked. All right, he had been checkmated again. They discussed for a while more and then left the study to do their own things. Once again, only she and Xiao Su were left in the study. Big iceberg, am I awesome? Chu Qingyan said with a smile. Generally speaking, yes, but not strict enough. Xiao Su looked at her face, full of joy, but he had to give her a blow. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Was she not strict enough? Seeing her head full of confusion, Xiao Su waved at her. Come here. Chu Qingyan obediently walked in front of him. Because she was tired from walking all the way, she sat on his lap and nestled in his arms like a little kitten. Normally, she would often hug his neck like this because the big iceberg's body made her feel at ease. However, she was a little unhappy at this time. Would I not do well? I think my plan was flawless. The little fellow's mood did not escape Xiao Su's eyes. Originally, he did not need to say it. At this age, she had already done well enough. However, he had high expectations. He hoped that she could improve and was not satisfied with this age. First, your identity. You disguised yourself as a nun. This identity cannot withstand a single blow. Xiao Su did not waste any more words and directly threw out the problem. Chu Qingyan's face turned pale when she heard this. This was arranged by Su Jian. No one should have recognized me. Every step of the plan is crucial. There is no such thing as should or shouldn't, possible or impossible. Sometimes, the slightest mistake leads to one wrong step after another, and then the whole plan is lost. Xiao Su's tone was stern. If he was lenient with her now, she would fall even more miserably in the future. Chu Qingyan fell silent. The big iceberg was right. She had taken things for granted and had not considered the details. If her identity was exposed, not only would she and the big iceberg be implicated, but the Yi family would also be implicated. I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so eager for quick success. After Sister Yin Luo finished taking his pulse and found out about the situation, we should have retreated and informed Kong Ling. We should have asked him to recommend himself as a doctor. Chu Qingyan's tone was a little vexed. Xiao Su nodded and continued. Second, you neglected the hidden enemy. Who? You mean the person who plotted against the third princess? Chu Qingyan was shocked. Since you can think of it right now, it proves that you're not stupid. Xiao Su patted her head. Generally speaking, no one would have the guts or the opportunity to murder the third princess. But in fact, someone did it and did it secretly. If it weren't for your appearance, I'm afraid that the person behind the scenes would have succeeded. Then, how could this person not know of your existence? How would a mastermind obstruct you in order to achieve their goal? Have you thought of all these? After he finished speaking, he saw her standing there in a daze. He knew that she had not thought far enough. However, he was worried that his words would hurt her deeply. He could not help but frown. Chapter 475. After hearing the big ice cube's words, Chu Qingyin's face turned pale. She was too impatient this time. If there was a slight mistake, it would implicate a lot of people. She forgot that in ancient times, challenging the emperor's authority was equivalent to enmeshing oneself in a cocoon. She was really too naive. Big Ice Cube, I'm sorry. I didn't think so much. I wanted to get the ice crystal flower as soon as possible, but I forgot to consider the details of the plan and didn't discuss it with you. Relying on her cleverness, she had achieved good results along the way, so she began to feel complacent. This was an illness, and it had to be cured. Feeling the guilt and self-blame of the person in his arms, Xiao Su couldn't help but reach out to comfort her. When doing things one step at a time, 3 steps at a time, avoid mistakes, and consider many uncertainties, just like the plan can't keep up with the changes. Chu Qingyin humbly listened to the advice. She pursed her lips and said, "Big Ice Cube, I know. Now we should think about how to remedy it." Her words made Xiao Su smile. He knew that his little fellow was not deeply hurt by his reproach. Instead, she cheered up. "Okay, what do you think of this matter? I want to know the relationship between Jiang Yunyao and the people around her first. Who wants to harm her and why? How do they want to harm her? I need to know myself and the enemy. Then I have the first suspect, and that is Princess Ning." After Chu Qingyin finished speaking, she told him about her encounter with the princess in the Blue Manor. "Okay, let Turin do it." She reacted quickly, which made Xiao Su very satisfied. "Next, you have to be prepared for someone to play the blame game and your identity to be exposed." Chu Qingyin nodded solemnly. This time, the big ice cube really taught her a profound lesson. But after she agreed, she immediately reacted and couldn't help but raise her head. "Big Ice Cube, you are so assured to leave it to me?" When their eyes met, Xian Mo's eyes were as deep as an ancient pool, but it gave people a sense of relief. Chu Qingyin almost couldn't extricate herself. If it weren't for the smile in his eyes, she would probably be absent-minded again. He was wearing a mask, and his facial features were not outstanding at all, but she was always unconsciously attracted to him. Could this be the so-called charm? Chu Qingyin couldn't understand. "You don't have confidence?" Xiao Su hugged her loosely and raised his eyebrows. "Boss, are you trying to goad me? Although I've seen through it, you still won." "I'm confident." Chu Qingyin lowered her head and nestled in his shoulder. She wrapped her arms around his neck and rubbed against his chest. She complained, but her face was filled with a faint smile. Big Ice Cube believed her. He had given her the chance of survival. As she rubbed, Chu Qingyin suddenly felt that something was wrong. She touched her hat and suddenly realized, "I haven't had time to change my clothes." No wonder Yiling Feng looked at me and laughed strangely. My reputation. After saying that, she took off her hat, and her hair fell over her shoulders. She touched her messy hair and smiled as she continued to lean on Big Ice Cube. Although she was wearing warm clothes, Big Ice Cube's body was like a heater. It felt more comfortable, and she didn't want to get up after lying there for a while. Looking at the fluffy little head in his arms, Xiao Su couldn't help but reach out to help her tidy up her messy hair. Actually, the little fellow's hair was black and straight. When he combed it with 5 fingers, it naturally became soft. It was a subconscious action, but the little fellow seemed to be addicted to it. After smoothing one side, she changed her angle and let him continue to tidy it up. Xiao Su felt that he had really raised a little pet. At this moment, he was smoothing her hair. "Big Ice Cube, I think that with your intelligence, you could have arranged a perfect plan long ago, and then let Jiang Country's emperor take out the ice crystal flower. But I found that ever since we came to Jiang country, you've been lazy and left everything to me. Aren't you afraid that I'll mess it up?" Perhaps it was because of her peaceful state of mind. The person in front of her was not as cold as usual. That was why she dared to ask the questions that had been bothering her during this period of time. If it were on a normal day, she wouldn't have this courage. Xiao Su faintly curved his lips, and a warm smile flashed across his eyes. "In the past, I used to use my brain too much. Now that I have you, it's rare that I can steal half a day of leisure. Isn't that good?" Chu Qingyan was stunned. After a while, she understood the meaning of his words. She was a little embarrassed. Could it be that Big Ice Cube was saying that with her around, he could be a hands-off boss? Wasn't he thinking too highly of her? "I'm only 10 years old. 10 years old." Although she didn't want to use age to talk about things, Chu Qingyan had to emphasize that she didn't want to overwork herself at such a young age. "In another month, you'll be 11. Xiao Su mercilessly gave her a blow to the heart. Chu Qingyan pretended to be dead in his arms. This person was really hateful. He closed his hands and pulled her into his arms like a kitten. After living for 20 years, this period of time was the most comfortable and peaceful days for him. Even if he didn't know if he could cure the poison, his state of mind was the most peaceful. "Big Ice Cube, you've been wearing a mask for 10 years. Do you feel uncomfortable?" Chu Qingyan played with the belt around his waist in boredom. She inadvertently remembered that when she was in Lawn Manor, she had worn a mask for nearly a day. At that time, she couldn't bear it. Now that she thought about it, was it more painful for Big Ice Cube to wear it for so many years? Her heart ached a little. Xiao Su was very calm about the little fellow's sudden change in thoughts. "It'll be fine once you get used to it." The first time he wore it, he was only 10 years old. His state of mind wasn't as steady as it was now. Sometimes, he wanted to take it off in irritation. But every time he thought of that big fire, he had to endure it no matter how much pain it was. He endured it for 10 years. Time passed by quickly. He thought that this would be the end of his life. But 10 years later, there was an accident. And this accident was in his arms right now. Wearing a mask is too painful. When we go out in the future, you should change your appearance. No one will recognize you anyway. Chu Qingyan suggested as she counted with her fingers. When she mentioned this issue, Xiao Su's brows twitched. "You mind my appearance?" Chu Qingyan immediately shook her head like a rattledrum. "Why would I? I'm not such a superficial person. Although, I'm obsessed with appearances." She silently added this sentence in her heart. He could tell at a glance whether the little fellow was lying or not. As a reward for her, Xiao Su smiled faintly and promised, "During the new year, I'll let you see my true appearance." Chu Qingyan was still counting with her fingers. At first, she didn't have much of a reaction, but soon her eyes widened. This Big Ice Cube, your appearance wasn't burned, right?" She had never touched on this issue because she was worried that it would be taboo for him. But when he took the initiative to bring it up, Chu Qingyan blurted out the question that had been hidden in her heart for a long time. "You'll know when the time comes." Xiao Su pressed her head into his embrace, along with her bewildered gaze. Just treat this as a New Year's gift to her. Chapter 476. Good things happen one after another. Huling, who was investigating the Shang Kingdom, sent a letter saying that one of the two doctors, Zhang Zhaotian, had been ruled out. Now, he was investigating the imperial physician, Ma Wu. He believed that there would be news soon. Chu Qingyan was waiting for the emperor of the Jiang Kingdom to summon her. According to Turin's investigation, the Jiang Kingdom's imperial palace was undergoing a large number of blood transfusions in the past 2 days because the imperial physicians found a large amount of hallucinogens on the third princess's clothes and quilt. They also verified that the third princess was indeed poisoned, not because she had yet to recover from typhoid. With this investigation, a large number of palace servants were investigated. At this time, they were in full swing to find the culprit. The imperial physicians were also urgently trying to find the antidote for the poison. Chu Qingyan thought that the emperor of the Jiang Kingdom would invite them to the palace to cure the poison within 2 days. She did not expect that the imperial physicians would be involved first. At this time, Cheng Yinluo, who was sitting in the garden and eating pastries, chuckled, and said, "If these imperial physicians could cure the poison, they would not have made the wrong diagnosis. Moreover, this poison is not common in the world. There are only a few people who know the antidote. If this continues, I'm afraid that the princess's life will be in danger. They will be summoned to the Jingyun Temple today or tomorrow. We don't have to worry." Chu Qingyan thought of Jiang Yinyao, and a trace of pity appeared in her eyes. Such a gentle and virtuous girl was rare. She hoped that she could recover soon. "Well, let's not talk about this. By the way, where is Dugu? Why haven't I seen her wandering around recently?" Cheng Yinluo asked with a muffled voice while chewing on a pastry. "I went to see her this morning. She looked a little sickly. She probably hasn't recovered yet." Chu Qingyan guessed. Cheng Yinluo frowned. "That's not right. The prescription I gave her should have cured her quickly. She should have recovered yesterday. Why is she still sickly?" Chu Qingyan was a little puzzled. At this time, Xining, who was standing to the side, heard the question and said, "This servant heard rumors from the servants. I don't know if it is true or not, but when Miss Dugu was sick, young master, he did not visit her. This made Miss Dugu very sad." Cheng Yinluo was suddenly enlightened. She shook her head and sighed. "Little girl, this is the real symptom of depression after catching a cold. It's causing the illness to be delayed and the recovery to be slow." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. Dugu Qing and Yi Lingfeng seemed to be a quarrelsome couple. One chased while the other dodged. The spectators were worried for the two of them. Although it's said that there's a thin veil between a woman and a man, I found that there's a thin layer between them. When I went to visit her today, I felt that there was something wrong with her expression. I don't know if there will be a day when she will give up. She sensed that Dugu Qing's mood was low. She didn't seem like the cheerful girl she used to be. Instead, she looked worried. Cheng Yinluo couldn't help but miss the sly and capricious girl she used to chat with at the borders of Jiang Kingdom. Chu Qingyan didn't know that her intuition was always so accurate. Yiling Feng is a gust of wind. It's very difficult to restrain a gust of wind. Cheng Yinluo didn't have much contact with him, but she came to this conclusion based on his behavior. "I hope Sister Dugu won't get hurt." Chu Qingyan prayed. When the sun was setting, Xiao Lai sent a message saying that the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom had arrived at Jingyun Temple to invite Wu Yin and Wu Yu to the palace the next day. Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yinluo were overjoyed. It's finally here. And in the room of the Yi residence, Dugu Qing also received a letter. It said that her brother, Dugu Qing, hadn't contacted her father and mother for more than a month because he was out training. Her father and mother were very worried and hoped that she could help send people to search for him. Dugu Qing braced herself and leaned against the bed wall. The letter was already in her hands, and she looked coldly at the subordinate kneeling in front of her. How was the investigation of His Highness the Crown Prince's whereabouts? Dugu Qing was different from her usual cheerful self. She exuded the aura of royalty from the moment she opened her mouth. If Chu Qingyan saw this scene, she would probably be amazed by the domineering princess. Since we couldn't contact His Highness half a month ago, we started to pay attention to His Highness' whereabouts. The last time we found His Highness was in Fu City. After that, we couldn't find His Highness anymore. A masked man in black knelt in front of the bed. His tone was filled with anxiety and self-blame. Dugu Qing's fingers clenched. Her brother might be unruly, but he wouldn't do anything out of line. Not being able to contact His Highness for a month was something that would never happen in the past. He wouldn't do anything that would make her father and mother worried for no reason. Looking at the gradually darkening night, Dugu Qing had a bad feeling. She made a prompt decision. Investigate who His Highness last saw. Spread out all hands and search for His Highness' whereabouts. If there's no news within 3 days, do as you deem fit. The masked man in black immediately bowed his head. Brother, nothing must happen to you. Dugu Qing's eyes were filled with deep worry. Jiang Kingdom, Prince Ping's residence. In an antique and luxurious room, a figure stood quietly on the windowsill. Her slim and beautiful figure was projected on the window screen, lovely and moving. But this silence only lasted for a moment. Suddenly, the person standing quietly suddenly swept the teacup beside her to the ground. Her shoulders were trembling with anger. The matter of poisoning has been exposed. How did you all do it? The boiling hot tea was splashed on the two people kneeling on the ground who looked like eunuchs and maidservants. But in the face of such a furious Jiang Yutong, the kneeling people only dared to cower and not say a word. Your Highness, please calm down. Jiang Yutong's trusted maidservant, Feng Yi, immediately supported her. Calm down. All my hard work has been wasted. Jiang Yutong gritted her teeth. Her eyes were red, and she didn't look like a virtuous lady in front of others. She looked like a venomous scorpion. The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom was furious when the poison in Jiang Yunyao's body was discovered. Everyone in the palace was being interrogated. Empress Jiang was in charge of the harem and had already investigated a large number of palace servants who had committed crimes. But they hadn't found any clues related to this matter yet. Jiang Yutong wasn't afraid of them investigating because when she set up this scheme, she had already made ample preparations so that they wouldn't find her. However, what she hated the most was that she only needed to take one step to make Jiang Yunyao die of an illness without her knowing it. But who would have thought that at this time? A Cheng Yao gene would appear and ruin all her efforts. Who are those two people? I want to know their identities. I want to see what ability they have to be able to neutralize the poison that I've spent so much effort to find. Jiang Yutong tore the brocade handkerchief in her hand and ordered coldly. Chapter 477. The next day, Chu Qingyin and Cheng Yinluo once again disguised themselves as nuns and entered the Jiang Kingdom's palace with Su Jian. Yayin Palace was not as quiet as the two of them had seen before. This palace was surrounded by 3 layers of imperial guards. Every palace maid and eunuch entering or leaving had to go through 3 layers of checkpoints before they could be let in. In the outer hall, more than a dozen imperial physicians were gathered together, waiting to be summoned at any time. Among them were the 2 imperial physicians that Chu Qingyin had seen when she was investigating the imperial physician hall. As she followed Su Jian into the inner hall, she saw that all the tea and pastries were specially tested for poison. From the outside of the hall to Jiang Yunyao's room, it could be said that they had passed through 5 checkpoints and 6 generals. It was the first time that Chu Qingyin had seen such a level of security. However, there was only one princess in the imperial harem. It would not be excessive even if all the people in the palace were to watch over her. In Jiang Yunyao's bedroom, not only was the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom present, but also the Empress of Jiang Kingdom, as well as the 2 rumored crown prince and second prince. So many people had appeared in the huge princess's bedroom, but it did not make people feel lively. Instead, it made people feel a little depressed and did not dare to breathe too loudly because everyone looked worried, especially the beautiful noblewoman sitting in front of Jiang Yunyao's bed. She was wearing a green and blue floor-length dress with plum blossoms. On the outside, there was a coat with the same color and complicated patterns. The openings were embroidered with a thin mist silk gauze. She wore a white and blue belt around her waist, and her collar and cuffs were embroidered with white plum blossoms. Her long hair was coiled into an immortal bun, adorned with golden hairpins, and inserted into a phoenix hairpin. She looked beautiful, graceful, and luxurious. As for her appearance, her cheeks were plump and her nose was greasy. She was gentle and quiet and looked amiable. However, at this moment, her brows were furrowed, and she looked worried and pitiful. She was clearly a woman in her 30s or 40s, but she gave people the feeling that she was in her 20s. Beside her sat the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom, who was dressed in a bright yellow imperial robe. It was said that he was in his 40s, but he was handsome. His brows were as sharp as blades, and his long and narrow eyes were slightly narrowed. With just one look, one could feel the sternness of 1,000 soldiers. This was the unique, domineering aura of a wise emperor who had walked out of the battlefield. This person was the ultimate boss of Jiang country, who would decide whether she could get the ice crystal flower or not. 2 slender figures were standing in front of the couch. One of them was wearing a royal blue brocade robe with golden edges and dark purple patterns. He wore a purple gold jade crown on his head and a white jade buckle belt on his waist. His facial features were deep and chiseled like a knife. He had an awe-inspiring body and a jade-like face. He had inherited the dignified aura of the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom. Chu Qingyan guessed that he was the crown prince of the Jiang Kingdom, Jiang Yunli. The other one should be the modest and gentle second prince, Jiang Yunjing. He was wearing a pear white brocade robe, and his hair fluttered in the wind. Chu Qingyan could not help but sigh. Not only did the Jiang Empire's royal family produce beauties, but they also produced handsome men. All of them were very good-looking. It was a feast for the eyes. It only took a few glances to size them up. When Chu Qingyan and Su Jian approached the bedchamber, they bowed in greeting. "This humble monk pays his respects to your majesty. Her Majesty the Empress, His Highness the Crown Prince, and His Highness the Second Prince." Su Jian put his palms together and spoke in an indifferent tone with a slight smile on his lips. Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yinluo followed closely behind and also bowed. When Su Jian bowed, the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom had already stood up. He raised his hand slightly and said politely, "Master Su Jian, you don't have to bow. I should be the one paying my respects." Su Jian smiled and said, "Your Majesty, you don't have to be so formal." The Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom nodded and said in an inquiring tone, "Master Su Jian is right. Are the two people behind you the masters who helped Jiao to find out that she was poisoned 2 days ago?" Su Jian smiled and nodded. Chu Qingyan was speechless at the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom's behavior of asking the obvious. However, she and Cheng Yinluo bowed again and introduced themselves. When they entered, they had already turned their attention to them. Their eyes were scrutinizing them as if they wanted to see through her and Cheng Yinluo. It was hard for them to imagine that such a young woman could identify the cause of the illness. So far, there had never been such a young doctor in the Jiang Kingdom. The imperial physicians in the palace have already examined Jiao and confirmed that she was poisoned. However, they haven't found a way to detoxify her. I wonder if the two of you have any ideas? The Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom's gaze fell on Cheng Yinluo. In his eyes, Chu Qingyan was just a little monk and nun. Even if she had medical skills, she couldn't be better than Cheng Yinluo. Therefore, he was asking for her opinion. Chu Qingyan didn't feel uncomfortable because of this. She could understand human nature, and it was the truth. The death poison is a rare poison in the world. Although it's rare, it doesn't mean that its toxicity is very strong. It's because it's difficult to mix the herbs, and it's easy to confuse it with colds. That's why it's so scary. Cheng Yinluo wasn't afraid in front of the emperor and spoke frankly with assurance. If it had been discovered in the early stages, the third princess's illness would have been cured very quickly. However, a year and a half has passed. Coupled with the hallucinogens' effects, the third princess's body is basically hollowed out. It's difficult to completely cure her, but it's not completely impossible. Cheng Yinluo's words made the Jiang Empress's heart flutter. However, she heaved a sigh of relief when she heard the last sentence. She said eagerly, "Master Wu Yin, as long as you can save my Jiao, I'll satisfy you no matter what you want. As long as my Jiao is healthy." Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. She had done so much just to wait for the Jiang Empress to say this. "Imperial Mother's words are our thoughts," said Jiang Yunjing, who had been standing at the side with a faint smile. Nothing was more important than their little sister. "That's right," the aloof crown prince of the Jiang Kingdom said. The Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom looked at Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yinluo in silence. His silence spoke louder than words. This meant that he agreed with his beloved wife and beloved son. Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yinluo looked at each other. Their chance had come. What they wanted was the ice crystal flower. They believed that the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom, who loved his daughter dearly, would most likely give it to her. Just as Cheng Yinluo was about to say something, a series of footsteps suddenly came from outside the hall. Bangles and pendants collided. The footsteps were hurried, but the sound of footsteps was not loud. Chu Qingyan guessed that the person in the lead should be a woman. At this moment, the palace servants standing on both sides of the bedchamber saluted. "Princess Ning, Ji Xiang, Jiang Yutong." Chu Qingyan's right eye twitched. Wasn't she the unruly princess who had fought with her at the Lawn Manor? What was she doing here now? Although she did not know, Chu Qingyin could not help but feel nervous. As if to verify Chu Qingyin's thoughts, Jiang Yutong, who was dressed in luxurious clothes and heavy makeup, came in first. Uncle, Your Majesty, these two people are liars. You, an empress, and my two brothers should not be fooled by them. She exposed Chu Qingyin's identity as soon as she spoke. Chu Qingyin's expression changed slightly. This person was indeed here to make trouble. Chapter 478. As soon as Jiang Yutong spoke, everyone's gaze fell on Chu Qingyin and Cheng Yanluo. Jiang Yutong was the daughter of King Ping, the emperor's younger brother. She was Jiang Yunyao's cousin. She had grown up with Jiang Yunyao and was very close to her. In the eyes of the public, they were closer than real sisters. Now that she said that Chu Qingyin and the others had ulterior motives, the emperor of Jiang Kingdom and the others immediately raised their guard. However, Su Jian had brought Cheng Yanluo and Chu Qingyin here, so the emperor of Jiang Kingdom still cared about his reputation. He said to Jiang Yutong in a low voice, "Yutong, don't talk nonsense. These two masters were recommended by Master Su Jian. You can't slander them as you wish unless you can show evidence." The first part of his words sounded like he was defending Su Jian, but the last part was hinting for Jiang Yutong to show evidence. Appeasing both sides was the most appropriate move. Chu Qingyin was secretly amazed. He was indeed an emperor who was good at scheming. He could see the knack of it with just a simple sentence. Jiang Yutong understood the emperor of Jiang Kingdom's words. Her uncle emperor doted on Jiang Yunyao so much that he couldn't let her suffer any harm. If there was a trace of danger, he would immediately be alert and protect her under his wings. She had experienced this firsthand after so many years. Not only did Jiang Yunyao enjoy the supreme favor that she didn't have, but she was also loved and respected by the people and was also treated differently by his second young master Tang. Jiang Yunyao didn't need to work hard. All the light and attention seemed to come naturally to her. It was also because of this that she wanted to get rid of Jiang Yunyao as soon as possible. Why did Jiang Yunyao get more than her? Why did the person she liked care about Jiang Yunyao? She couldn't accept it. As long as Jiang Yunyao wasn't in this world, she would be the only princess of the Jiang Kingdom. Even if she was a princess, she would be the only princess in the royal family. No one would fight for her favor. Therefore, she wouldn't allow these people to save Jiang Yunyao today. And coincidentally, she had a secret that could kill these people. She could only say that the heavens were on her side. Even the heavens couldn't tolerate Jiang Yunyao. Chu Qingyin looked at Jiang Yunyao coldly, waiting for her to make a move. Cheng Yanluo was a little flustered, but when she turned to look at Chu Qingyin, who looked calm and unperturbed, she somehow relaxed. The little girl always gave people a calming feeling. Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but feel that the older she was, the more she had to rely on her to calm herself down. "Yutong, tell me. Don't be afraid. If it's true, I'll ask your uncle to deal with it impartially. However, if it's just a joke, I won't let you off easily." At this time, Empress Jiang, who was worried about her precious daughter's poison, could not help but frown again after hearing Jiang Yutong's words. Her tone was not as gentle and amiable as usual. Instead, there was a hint of coldness in it. Xiao was her flesh and blood. Nothing could happen to her. This was the first time Empress Jiang had spoken to her in such a stern tone. Jiang Yutong was stunned for a moment before she nodded. "Yutong didn't lie to you. These two nuns are in disguise. They are not Buddhist disciples. They have disguised themselves as nuns in order to harm Sister Yao. If you don't believe me, you can take off their hats and see if you can see their long hair. Then, you will be able to identify them." Once Jiang Yutong said that, everyone's gaze turned to Chu Qingyin and Cheng Yanluo. They were all trying to judge them. "Masters, please take off your hats. If my cousin has wrongly accused you, we will prove your innocence. However, if what she said is true, we won't let you off easily." The crown prince, Jiang Yunli, glanced coldly at Chu Qingyin and Cheng Yanluo. Su Jian, who was standing at the side, frowned slightly. When he chose to let them disguise themselves as nuns, he did not think too much about it. However, he did not expect that it would become useless and that they would be trapped here. He felt very guilty for his lack of consideration. He did not hesitate and wanted to go forward to explain this matter to the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom. He believed that with the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom's deep sense of righteousness, he would be able to believe that this was a misunderstanding. However, when he was about to step forward, he realized that Chu Qingyan was looking at the crowd without a hint of worry. He stopped in his tracks and heard Chu Qingyan's clear voice in the room. Commandery Princess Ning is right. We are not real nuns indeed. Chu Qingyan admitted openly without a trace of fear. Her face was calm, and there was a smile on her face. Chu Qingyan's admission made the atmosphere turn serious. Imperial uncle, imperial aunt, brother crown prince, second brother, look. Yutong didn't lie to you. They have ulterior motives. They want to harm Sister Yao. We can't let them off. Jiang Yutong's eyes flashed with pride. However, when she spoke, her voice was full of grievance, as if she was a child who did a good deed but did not get candy. Empress Jiang patted her hand and comforted her. I know you are doing this for the good of your sister Yao. You are a good child. Even though Chu Qingyan had admitted to it, her calm demeanor made these scheming people suspicious. It was as if she had nothing to fear and was not panicking at all. Who are you? Why are you lying? What is your motive? Jiao is kind by nature and has never been hostile to anyone. Why do you want to harm her? The crown prince, Jiang Yunli, was the first to question them. The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom and Empress Jiang looked at them coldly. Ice Cube said that the more powerful a person was, the more careful and suspicious they would be. Only by speaking frankly could they dispel their doubts. Chu Qingyan smiled and said frankly, Your Majesty, Empress, Crown Prince, and Second Prince, I am Chu Qingyan, a citizen of Sichuan. This is Changyin Luo, the disciple of divine Dr. Luo from Sichuan. We came to Jiang Kingdom for no other reason than to look for a medicinal herb, the ice crystal flower. After asking around, we found out that the ice crystal flower was kept in the palace by Your Majesty. However, we are just commoners and have no chance to meet Your Majesty. We met by chance and found out that the third princess has been ill for a long time, so we want to do our best. Speaking of this, Chu Qingyan glanced at Su Jian beside her and continued, But we were afraid that our unknown origins would arouse Your Majesty's suspicion. When we found out that Master Su Jian, the holy monk of Sichuan, was also in Jiang Kingdom, we went to Jingyun Temple to ask for his help. Master Su Jian was merciful and agreed to help us. So, we came to the palace for the first time. In fact, we were not sure, so we hid our identities. This time, we found the antidote and were about to reveal our identities to Your Majesty. But we were exposed by Princess Ning first. As mentioned above, this is the reason why we disguised ourselves. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, Jiang Yutong immediately said, Imperial uncle, imperial aunt, she's talking nonsense. They are here to harm Sister Yao. You must not let them go. Chu Qingyan looked at Jiang Yutong with a faint smile. Princess Ning, you know best who harmed the third princess. Chapter 479. What? Chu Qingyan's words shocked Jiang Yutong. Could it be that this person knew something? Jiang Yutong's heart trembled. However, when she thought of how meticulous she had been, it was impossible for her to leave any traces behind, so she assumed that she was just making things up. Jiang Yutong felt relieved. What do you mean by that? The Empress glanced at Jiang Yutong, then looked at Chu Qingyan coldly. The Empress couldn't remain calm, as this concerned Zhou. She raised her eyebrows and displayed the aura of an empress. However, this was completely useless against Chu Qingyan. Her big ice cube's aura was not something that Empress Jiang could compare to. The difference was huge. Hence, Chu Qingyan looked at the bewildered Jiang Yutong and smiled. If this lass had not come to cause trouble, Chu Qingyan would not have taken the initiative to expose her. However, since this lass had declared war, how could Chu Qingyan not accept her challenge? Moreover, she wouldn't have come to fight without being fully prepared. If others didn't offend her, she wouldn't offend them. If others offended her, she wouldn't leave anyone alive. When we first entered the palace, we could tell that the third princess was poisoned. Sister Yinluo was in charge of taking her pulse, while Qingyan was in charge of the investigation. Everyone should know that the third princess was poisoned because mint was added to the spices in the room. It reacted with the decoction that she drank to treat her typhoid fever, resulting in the accumulation of toxins in her body. Hence, here's the crux of the problem. Chu Qingyan smiled mysteriously and continued. Mint is a very common herb in other countries, but it's almost unheard of in the Jiang Kingdom. This is because the climate and soil of the Jiang Kingdom aren't suitable for growing mint. Hence, in order to grow mint, we have to spend a certain amount of manpower and resources to create a place with a different climate and soil from the Jiang Kingdom. At this point, Chu Qingyan's gaze landed on Jiang Yutong. Her eyes were full of smiles as she said, I heard that Princess Ning has a garden that she doesn't allow people to enter easily. However, what kind of exotic flowers and herbs did she plant that required 4 or 5 experts from different countries? Qingyan is very curious. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom and the others looked at Jiang Yutong in surprise. Jiang Yutong, on the other hand, looked terrified. How did this person know about her mint planting? This person was too terrifying. However, when she sensed the gazes of the Jiang Empress and the others, even though she was good at disguising herself, she gave herself away. After all, she was only a 15-year-old girl. How could she withstand the scrutiny and judgment of these shrewd people? You're spouting nonsense. How could I possibly harm Big Sis Xiao? Don't try to sow discord between us sisters. Imperial aunt, imperial uncle, imperial brothers, please don't believe this witch's nonsense. You have to stand up for Yutong. Jiang Yutong burst into tears as soon as she said so. Her tears fell like a waterfall. Coupled with her petite and adorable appearance, she looked pitiful at this moment. Empress Jiang comforted her. Yutong, don't worry. If she has wronged you, I will stand up for you. Jiang Yutong was secretly delighted. It seemed that Imperial Aunt still believed her. However, she was happy too early. Empress Jiang did not miss the smug look in her eyes. She stared at her calmly and continued. Therefore, I will send someone to investigate Prince Ping's residence. The innocent will be innocent. I will stand up for you. As soon as she said this, Jiang Yutong's face turned pale. The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom ordered, Yunli, send someone to Prince Ping's residence. Do not alarm Prince Ping. Crown Prince Jiang Yunli acknowledged. He did not look at the frightened Jiang Yutong. Instead, he left the bedroom and returned in less than 10 minutes. Everyone present was smart. Jiang Yutong was still young and inexperienced. The expression on her face was enough to explain everything. The atmosphere in the room suddenly turned cold. Jiang Yutong gripped her handkerchief with both hands. She stood with her head lowered. Cold sweat covered her face. Her bright red lips were now pale. Time passed by slowly. To her, it was torture. She regretted it now. She did not regret poisoning Jiang Yunyao, but she regretted not destroying the mint garden earlier. She could not accept it. She had to clear her name. Chu Qingyan looked at Jiang Yutong, who was trembling slightly. Although she could not see her expression clearly, she knew that this little girl was scared out of her wits. She shook her head in her heart. She was too confident and too arrogant. That was why she left behind such a huge piece of evidence. It was hard to destroy it in a short period of time. Suddenly, Jiang Yutong knelt down. Yutong, what are you doing? Get up. Although the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom spoke with a loving tone, his cold and stern eyes had already revealed his thoughts at this moment. Jiang Yutong shook her head and looked up at the Empress with teary eyes. Yutong admits that I was indeed poisoned by peppermint, but that was my hobby. 3 years ago, Yutong heard that peppermint can refresh the mind and has a refreshing smell, so I thought of planting it. That's why I asked Imperial Father to spend a lot of effort to hire a few experts in planting. Yutong has never thought of harming Sister Yao. Perhaps someone has sneaked into the peppermint garden to steal the peppermint and harm Sister Yao. You're lying. Chu Qingyan looked at her with a chuckle. Even now, she was still thinking of how to escape. If this girl could escape today, she would definitely be a formidable opponent in the future. How can you say that I'm lying? I've been planting mint for more than 3 years. Sister Yao was poisoned last year. If I wanted to harm Sister Yao, why would I wait so long? Jiang Yunyao glared at her. Chu Qingyin's lips curled into a mocking smile as she said, "That's because 3 years ago, you wanted to murder this sister of yours who grew up with you." Her words hit the nail on the head. She bit her lip. How could a 10-year-old girl be so smart? She could even see through her many years of planning. Yutong, is what she said true? Jiang Yunjing, who was usually gentle, asked sternly with a serious face. Jiang Yutong shook her head in fear. This was her brother who doted on her the most. At this moment, the anger in his eyes made her heart ache. Brother Yunjing, this person is here to sow discord. She's just a child who hasn't reached marriageable age. She's just spouting nonsense. Don't believe her slander. After she finished speaking, she turned to look at Chu Qinyan. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her expression was innocent. However, she still stubbornly straightened her body and put on a noble and proud look. As a princess, I don't usually leave the house. How could I have come into contact with such a vicious poison? If you want to frame me, at least think of a reasonable excuse. Empress Jiang and the others hesitated when they heard Jiang Yutong's words. This kind of poison was rare in the world. Jiang Yutong usually stayed in the prince's residence or the palace. She really didn't have the chance to come into contact with this kind of poison. Everyone's doubts made Jiang Yutong feel relieved. When the others couldn't see, she gave Chu Qinyan a provocative smile. Chu Qinyan received her provocation and couldn't help but laugh. She raised her eyebrows and smiled brightly. Her tone was teasing, but her words stunned Jiang Yutong. Princess Ning, are you sure you want me to continue and answer your question? Chapter 480. Jiang Yutong panicked when she heard Chu Qinyan's words. However, she was still unwilling to admit defeat. Chu Qinyan, don't try to mislead the crowd with your lies. Princess Ning, do you still remember the Blue Manor? Chu Qinyan looked at her as if she had just mentioned it casually. However, the emperor of the Jiang kingdom and the others' expressions changed when they heard the words Blue Manor. They looked at Jiang Yutong with mixed feelings. The Blue Manor was the largest trading center in the world. Although the royal family and the others had forbidden their subordinates from participating, the number of people participating only increased. Even Prince Lord would participate in private. Jiang Yutong did not care about the reactions of the empress and the others. She looked at Chu Qinyan in shock. No one else knew about her participation in the Blue Manor except for her father. How did Chu Qinyan know? She looked at Chu Qinyan in horror. At this moment, she suddenly felt that Chu Qinyan looked familiar, especially her voice and figure. Just as Jiang Yutong was about to recall, Chu Qinyan, who was standing in front of her, saw through her confusion. Chu Qinyan looked at her with a smile. Princess Ning, don't you remember? The ginseng fruit, the heartless pearl. Jiang Yutong's eyes widened when she heard this. Scenes from the past flashed before her eyes. She had forgotten where she was now. She gritted her teeth and said, "Yes, I remember you. You were the girl who fought with me for the heartless pearl and the ginseng fruit. I said that if I meet you one day, I will not let you have an easy time." Jiang Yutong did not see fear on her face as she had expected. Instead, she saw a pitiful smile. Jiang Yutong flew into a rage out of humiliation. Just as she was about to argue with her, she heard a cold shout. "Yutong, did you really do all this?" The emperor of the Jiang kingdom looked at her coldly. Although the conversation just now did not prove anything, everyone present could tell that there was something fishy going on. What kind of place was the Blue Manor? There were all sorts of rare treasures, weapons, poisons, and all sorts of things. It was as easy as flipping one's hand to obtain a poison recipe that could kill without leaving a trace. At this point, Jiang Yutong could no longer speak. She had been angered by Chu Qinyan, and her anger had gotten to her head. She had forgotten where she was, and when she regained her senses, her face was full of shock. Her legs went soft, and she fell to her knees. "Imperial Uncle, At this time a guard quickly walked in. This subordinate has confirmed that there is indeed a mint garden in King Ping's residence. The guard's report came at just the right time. Jiang Yutong collapsed to the ground. The eyes of the Empress of Jiang Empire and the two princes were filled with grief, anger, and disbelief. Yutong, His Majesty and I have treated you well. Why did you do such a thing to harm your own sister? Empress Jiang asked sorrowfully as she stroked her chest. Her eyes were red. Seeing this, Chu Qingyan felt that she had succeeded in her mission and stood aside with Cheng Yinluo. Now that they were interrogating the criminal, all they needed to do was to watch the show. Imperial Aunt Jiang Yutong covered her face and cried bitterly. However, her cries did not move anyone present. This was a conspiracy that had been planned for 3 years and had tortured her sister for more than a year. She had watched as her sister went from being healthy to suffering from a serious illness without a trace of remorse. This kind of person was vicious and cold-blooded. She did not deserve any sympathy. While everyone was interrogating the criminal, the unconscious Jiang Yunyao slowly opened her eyes. She had already woken up when Jiang Yutong and Chu Qingyan were arguing. However, she did not have enough energy to get up immediately. At this time, she sat up with difficulty. When Empress Jiang heard the movement behind her, she immediately turned around and reached out to support her daughter. She said in surprise, "Jiao, you're awake." Jiang Yunyao smiled and nodded. Then, she looked past her mother's shoulder and looked at the person kneeling on the ground. Jiang Yunyao had always treated Jiang Yunyao with all her heart. She had shared her joy and sorrow with Jiang Yunyao. Jiang Yunyao did not like to see Jiang Yunyao being bullied and had always stood up for her. However, in the end, Jiang Yunyao had ended up like this. Jiang Yunyao's voice was hoarse and her eyes were wet. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. "Xiao, why did you do this? I don't think I've mistreated you in any way. If you like something, I'll give it to you. When you're happy, I'll laugh with you. When you're sad, I'll cry with you. Why do you treat me like this?" Jiang Yutong, who had her head lowered, was silent for a moment. Then, she slowly raised her head. The pleading look on her face was replaced by a look of ridicule that Jiang Yunyao had never seen before. Her almond-shaped eyes were filled with viciousness, arrogance, and jealousy. "Why? You're asking me why?" Jiang Yutong laughed. Her laughter was terrifying. "Where should I start? Let's start from when we are sensible and can remember. We are both daughters of the royal family. Just because you're the daughter of the emperor and I am the daughter of the idol prince, the difference in our status is huge. The noble young masters and ladies around you only have eyes for you. I'm just a foil to you. You're a peony, I am a green leaf, you're a cloud in the sky, and I'm just a gust of wind beside you. No one will notice my existence." Jiang Yunyao was stunned. Then, she smiled bitterly. It turned out that her dissatisfaction was rooted from such a long time ago. As if because her deeds were exposed, Jiang Yutong spoke without any scruples. She did not care about the expressions of others and continued to speak. "But I was young and ignorant. I also wanted what you had, but father scolded me. You were a princess, and I could not covet those things that did not belong to my status. For example, the 9 turns pearl you received on your birthday. That was a gift from another country. I don't deserve to have it." Jiang Yutong sneered. "When I saw that you liked it, didn't I give you the 9 turns pearl?" She liked the 9 turns pearl very much. But when she saw that Xiao loved it so much, she gave it to Xiao. "You didn't want it. Why should I be grateful?" Jiang Yutong smiled maliciously. "Do you know the whereabouts of the 9 turns pearl? I have broken it and scattered it in the pond in the residence. Not only the 9 turns pearl, but also the Xianing jade, the phoenix tail zither, the bluestone brush." Jiang Yunyao's heart ached. "I see. No wonder I have never seen you wear it." When she thought of the things she gave her in the past turning into powder, those were her favorite things in the past, Jiang Yunyao closed her eyes. Her face was full of pain. "Jiang Yunyao, I will take all the things you like. After taking them, I will destroy them. I like to see you like them very much, but because you're the elder sister, Kong Rong pair. The more revenge I take, the better my heart feels." Looking at Jiang Yunyao's pale face, Jiang Yutong felt a trace of pleasure. Chu Qingyin watched this scene from the side and could not help but sympathize with the third princess. You treat them like treasures, but she discards them like worn-out shoes. Sad and lamentable. Chapter 481. Shut up. The emperor of the Jiang kingdom was enraged. He looked at Jiang Yutong coldly. Vicious woman, I have misjudged you and allowed you to stay by Jiao Er's side. Jiang Yutong was shocked. She respected her uncle the most since she was young. Jiang Yutong's face turned pale when he reprimanded her coldly. At this moment, Empress Jiang looked at Jiang Yutong with a pained expression. Yutong, we've always treated you as our own, and we've never been harsh on you. Apart from the difference in status, we'll give you everything that Xiao has because we feel that it's not easy to become a family. However, how could you repay kindness with ingratitude and be so cruel as to poison Xiao? For more than a year, you've watched Xiao suffer on the sickbed. The worst thing I should have done in this life was to treat you as well as Xiao. The worst thing I should have done in this life was to treat you as well as Xiao. These words, coming from the mouth of her most beloved imperial aunt, were undoubtedly the most powerful attack. Uncle, aunt, don't say that. Jiang Yutong broke down. I always thought that as long as Sister Yao disappeared, you would treat me even better. Yutong, I didn't expect you to be so vicious, repaying evil with good. All these years, we have misjudged you. Xiao is Xiao, and you are you. You two cannot be lumped together. My biological sister is only Xiao. She is irreplaceable. Crown Prince Jiang Yunli looked at her coldly. I have cared and protected you all these years in vain. The emperor of the Jiang kingdom was able to withstand the pressure of the imperial court and insist on only marrying Empress Jiang in this life. The children he raised were all people who valued relationships and loyalty. The betrayal of their loved ones was undoubtedly the most painful thing in their hearts. Jiang Yutong's heart ached when she heard the words of her most beloved eldest cousin brother. However, she was already an arrow that left the bow. There was no turning back. She was the kind of person who didn't want others to have a good time, and she didn't want others to have a good time either. At this moment, she wanted Jiang Yunyao to have a taste of the pain she was going through. Thus, she was filled with evil. She hid the begging and sadness on her face and replaced it with a sinister smile. She raised her head and looked at Jiang Yunyao, who was looking at her with eyes full of sorrow. She said slowly, Big Sister Yunyao, do you know that I've never failed to get the things you like since we were young? But there's one thing that I didn't get, and you didn't get it either. What? Jiang Yunyao looked at her sadly. After the shock just now, she didn't know how many things Jiang Yutong was hiding from her, but she was prepared for the worst. When Empress Jiang saw this, she immediately raised her hand to stop them. Take Jiang Yutong away. Don't let her disturb the princess again. As soon as he finished speaking, the guards had already arrived. Wait, Jiang Yunyao said unexpectedly. The second prince, Jiang Yunjing, looked at his royal sister worriedly. Xiao, you should rest well now. Don't listen to her nonsense. Otherwise, it will affect your health. Jiang Yunyao shook her head. It's okay. I want to know what else she did behind my back. Let my heart die a little more. Her sad words moved everyone. Jiang Yunjing nodded helplessly, but when he turned to look at Jiang Yutong, his gaze was intimidating. He hoped that she would be careful with her words and actions. Even her second cousin brother was protecting Jiang Yunyao. Jiang Yutong's jealousy and malice grew crazily. She looked at Jiang Yunyao mockingly. There's one thing that you might not know. It's about Brother Qingshang. I knew long ago why he accepted the imperial edict. It's because Prime Minister Tang made a deal with Imperial Uncle. As long as Brother Qingshang was willing to marry you, Imperial Uncle would give a 9-day due to the Prime Minister's residence to save Miss Tang. Although I knew about it, I didn't tell you and delayed it until the day of the wedding. So the letter I received before I got on the sedan chair was sent by you? Jiang Yunyao leaned against the bed and looked at her in shock. That's right. That's right. That's right. Last year, Imperial Uncle betrothed you to him. Do you know how much pain and sadness I felt? I've loved him for so many years, but because of an imperial edict, I lost the right to love him. Whatever you want, there will always be people racking their brains for you. When you frown, there will always be people who will break their hearts for you. Even when you like Big Brother Ching Chong, Imperial Uncle will do everything in his power to help you achieve your wish. What about me? Has anyone ever considered my feelings? Jiang Yunyao looked at the hysterical Jiang Yutong and felt as if thousands of knives were cutting her heart. She recalled the conversation she had with him on the day of the wedding. It was a past that she didn't want to touch again. Now it was exposed again, dripping with blood. She closed her eyes and tears rolled down her cheeks. How did you know that I would break the engagement? If I didn't break the engagement, I would already be his wife. This was her last question. Jiang Yutong said proudly, because the person who knows you the best is usually your enemy. You have been deeply influenced by Imperial Uncle and Imperial Aunt since you were young. What you wanted was a happy relationship where you would hold hands until you grew old. If you knew that Brother Ching Chong was forced to marry you, you would never have accepted this marriage. At that time, you fell ill as soon as you broke the engagement. I thought this would be a good opportunity, so I bribed the palace maids in your palace to secretly add mint to your incense burner and sprinkle hallucinogens on your clothes. Even the medicine you took every day was prepared by the people I hid in the palace. For so many years, I endured, hated, envied, and suffered. So I didn't want you to leave so easily. I wanted you to experience the torment of day and night without leaving any traces. That way, no one would suspect me. Jiang Yutong was immersed in her flawless plan. If Chu Qingyin hadn't appeared out of nowhere, she would have achieved her goal very quickly. Receiving Jiang Yutong's resentful gaze, Chu Qingyin refused to back down. She couldn't be blamed for this. She didn't want to get involved in the imperial family's affairs at first, but Jiang Yutong kept harping on her. He didn't have time to protect himself, so Jiang Yunyao reaped what she sowed. Jiang Yunyao laughed bitterly. It turned out that the person who knew you the best hurt you the most. But thank you. At least I didn't go through with this marriage. This may be the only thing you've done right in all these years. A forced melon is not sweet. I, Jiang Yunyao, am not the kind of person who will force others. After speaking, Jiang Yunyao turned to look at her guilty father. She pursed her lips and smiled slightly. Imperial father, I have never blamed you. You don't have to blame yourself for this. Her imperial father had always thought that she fell ill because of this matter. Every time he saw her, his eyes were filled with self-blame and regret. Now that the truth was out, her imperial father didn't have to bear this burden anymore. Jiu imperial father shouldn't have decided on that marriage without asking you first. That's why you suffered such a disaster. The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom was still blaming himself. Jiang Yunyao was about to say something when she suddenly frowned and spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 482. Jiang Yunyao vomited blood and fainted. Everyone was in a panic. The imperial physician was called in. The imperial physician frowned when he felt Jiang Yunyao's pulse. Then, he turned pale with fright. "Oh, it's the princess." The empress saw the expression on the imperial physician's face. She almost couldn't stand straight. She quickly asked, "PRA princess?" The imperial physician in his 60s stuttered and couldn't speak. Perhaps he was frightened or something else. The emperor of Jiang supported the empress and said coldly, "Tell us the truth." As soon as he finished, the imperial physician knelt down and said in a trembling voice, "The princess's mood swings have triggered the poison. There's nothing we can do now." The imperial physician buried his forehead in the ground. Everyone knew how important the princess was to the emperor and the empress. They cherished her so much that she would melt in their mouth. Now that something happened to the princess, the entire imperial physician hospital would have to die with her. Because of their incompetence, they couldn't find the real cause of the princess's illness even after 1.5 years. The empress almost fainted when she heard the news. Fortunately, the emperor of Jiang held her in his arms and prevented her from falling. "Ha! The heavens are so merciful. They know that I can't live, so they won't let Sister Yao live alone." Jiang Yutong laughed shrilly. The crown prince, Jiang Yunli, was worried that Jiang Yutong would agitate his mother again. He immediately waved his hand and ordered people to take her to the prison. Jiang Yunyao, I can't have her. You can't have her either. Let's go to hell together. Jiang Yutong had gone crazy. She was crying and laughing at the same time. She was dragged away by the guards. The guards were worried that she would offend the emperor, so they immediately covered her mouth. As Chu Qingyan watched this farce unfold, her heart was filled with sorrow. My Jiu, the empress cried in the emperor's arms. Her voice was choked with sobs. Anyone who heard it would cry. The imperial physicians were summoned into the crown prince's bedchamber one after another. However, they all came up with the same answer. The third princess didn't have long to live. The atmosphere of despair and pain lingered in the room. It didn't dissipate for a long time. At this moment, the empress saw Chu Qingyan standing at the side. It was as if she saw her savior. Didn't you find the cause of Jiu Er's illness? Now, please take a look at her and see if she's really. At this point, Empress Jiang was speechless. The hearts of parents in the world were pitiful. Chu Qingyan didn't move. Instead, she looked at the emperor of the Jiang kingdom. He was the one in control of this place. Receiving Chu Qingyan's gaze, the emperor of Jiang kingdom narrowed his eyes, but the girl in front of him met his gaze without any fear, without any timidity. There were only a few people who dared to look directly at him. He was slightly surprised, but at this time, the arrow on the bow had to be shot. He immediately said, "Please help me." Chu Qingyan nodded. The emperor of the Jiang kingdom did not make any promises, but his words were enough. At least their safety was guaranteed at this time. She turned to Cheng Yinluo and said, "Help the third princess take a look at her condition." Cheng Yinluo nodded and stepped forward with her medical kit. The crowd made way for the two of them. At this time, Jiang Yunyao's face was almost transparent. It reminded people of crystal clear glass, precious but fragile. Cheng Yinluo placed her hand on Jiang Yunyao's slender wrist, then focused on feeling her pulse. She said, "Her pulse is very weak. The vast death poison is spreading in her blood and invading her organs. That's why she vomited blood and fainted. She'll die in 2 hours at the latest." When Cheng Yinluo said this, Empress Jiang cried out, "Miss, please save Jiao. I'll give you anything you want. Please save her. She's only 16 years old. She hasn't even lived half of her life. She's been tormented by her illness for so long and hasn't even left the palace. She can't just—" Empress Jiang was sobbing. At this time, she was no longer the noble empress of a country, but an ordinary mother begging a doctor to save her poor daughter's life. Chu Qingyan was sad when she heard this. "Your Majesty, don't be anxious. Let her finish first." Chu Qingyan comforted her. Yinluo wouldn't be so calm if she wasn't confident, so she believed that Yinluo had a solution. "Mother, don't be anxious. Calm down first." The second prince, Jiang Yunjing, stepped forward and stood beside Empress Jiang, comforting her. Crown Prince Jiang Yunli nodded in agreement. After the room fell silent, Cheng Yinluo continued, "Although her condition is like this, I have a way to try." Her words were like rain falling from a dried-up well. "All right, tell me what you need." The emperor of Jiang Kingdom said immediately, "I need 30 silver needles, candles, and a dagger." Cheng Yinluo didn't stand on ceremony and ordered directly. The emperor of Jiang Kingdom ordered the palace servants to fetch them. Soon the items arrived. "Men, please leave." Cheng Yinluo checked the length of the silver needles and replied without looking up, "Miss, what are you doing?" Empress Jiang asked in confusion. Chu Qingyan explained, "She's going to perform acupuncture on the third princess. She'll force the poison to a certain area and then let the blood out. This is the fastest and most effective method." Yinluo had discussed the treatment of Jiang Yunyao with her before, so Chu Qingyan took the initiative to explain when Yinluo was busy. Everyone left at once, except for the empress, Chu Qingyan, and a few palace maids. "Little girl, help me take off the third princess's clothes. The rest of you, light the stove in the room. Don't let the third princess catch a cold." Cheng Yinluo began to instruct. "Okay." Chu Qingyan immediately stepped forward to help. She and Ryue took off Jiang Yunyao's clothes. The Empress Jiang immediately asked the palace servants to add fuel to the fire. Cheng Yinluo opened the needle bag and picked out some silver needles. She quickly placed them on the major acupoints on Jiang Yunyao's body and sealed them. In a short while, 30 silver needles were placed all over Jiang Yunyao's important acupoints. This acupuncture method was invented by my medical center. It's very effective in expelling poison. After Cheng Yinluo finished speaking, she waited for half an hour. Then, she took out the silver needles and heated the dagger in the fire until it turned red. She asked Chu Qingyan and the others to hold Jiang Yunyao down. Then, she made a cut on Jiang Yunyao's wrist. Soon, red streaks of blood appeared. Then, black blood with a foul smell flowed out. This is the vast death poison, Cheng Yinluo explained. When the black blood gradually faded and turned red, Cheng Yinluo immediately sprinkled hemostatic powder on the wound. Soon, the bleeding stopped. Then, she skillfully wrapped the wound with gauze and got up. Jiang Yunyao's gloomy face had faded and was replaced by a pale face. "How is Jiao now?" the Empress Jiang asked. "She's fine now, but she must be detoxified within 3 days because there are still remnants of the poison in her body. If it's not removed as soon as possible, there will be no end of trouble." Cheng Yinluo cleaned her hands with a brocade cloth. Thank God. The Empress Jiang's eyes were filled with joy. When the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom and the others heard the news and heard that Jiang Yunyao was fine, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Because Jiang Yunyao needed to rest, the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom asked Chu Qingyan and Ryue to go to the outer hall. Chu Qingyan knew that the Emperor was going to negotiate with them. Chapter 483. Just as Chu Qingyan had expected, the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom had summoned the two of them here to interrogate them. Su Jian, on the other hand, had been invited to another place to rest. In the outer hall, the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom sat on the main seat while the Crown Prince, Jiang Yunli, and the second prince, Jiang Yunjing, sat on either side of him. "May I ask who you are?" The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom looked at the two people standing in the hall and asked unhurriedly. After Chu Qingyan explained the reason for their appearance, the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom couldn't help but take a deep look at Chu Qingyan. It was true that the ice crystal flower was in the palace, but he had deliberately blocked the news. He didn't expect her to find out about it. She was fearless in the face of danger and spoke calmly. She didn't seem like a common girl. The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom had a trace of doubt about her identity. "I am the princess consort of the King of England of Sichuan Kingdom. This is Divine Dr. Luo's disciple, Cheng Yinluo." Chu Qingyan didn't hide her identity this time and directly revealed her identity. She then took out a token from her waist and flashed it in front of everyone. Before he left, Big Ice Cube had told him that the Emperor of the Jiang Kingdom had been in the military all his life, and he had been able to make hundreds of thousands of soldiers follow him loyally. It was all because of him that he kept his promises. If he had no other choice, he could reveal his identity to him. He even gave her the token that represented his identity. The King of England? Is it the god of war, Xiao, Su? Although Sichuan Kingdom and Jiang Kingdom were separated by Junlan Kingdom, Jiang Kingdom had never been closed off from news of other kingdoms. Chu Qingyan wasn't surprised that he knew about Big Ice Cube. She nodded in acknowledgement. "I heard that the King of England went missing in his own kingdom. Now that he has appeared here, it's a little unbelievable." Jiang Yunli looked at Chu Qingyan. Although her tone was indifferent, her expression was thoughtful, as if she was trying to guess the purpose of Chu Qingyan's trip. Chu Qingyan smiled. The news that the Big Ice Cube was missing must have spread. So, Chu Qingyan said frankly, "We went out, but unfortunately encountered an assassination. His Highness was poisoned and needed the ice crystal flower as the antidote. We searched many places and finally learned that the ice crystal flower was in His Majesty's hands. So we came to Jiang Kingdom. Then, you know what happened next." The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom admired Chu Qingyan's frankness and magnanimity. It was rare to see such a young girl who was so eloquent and thoughtful. Just now, She had set a trap for Jiang Yutong to fall into and completely admitted her mistake. It was enough to show that this Chu Qingyan was not simple. She was worthy of being Xiao Su's follower. You want to save Jiao in exchange for the ice crystal flower. Unfortunately, Jiao is out of danger now. What if I don't agree to give you the ice crystal flower? The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom had a faint smile on his face, but no one could tell what he was thinking at this time. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile, and her tone was a little regretful. Your Majesty of Jiang Kingdom, a doctor has the heart of a parent. Even if you don't exchange, we won't give up on saving the third princess. A kind girl will always be treated well by the heavens, and so will the third princess. But we think that if we can get the ice crystal flower, it will be the best of both worlds. After all, we are outsiders, and you are the ruler of a country. We can only accept any arrangement you make. When playing tricks, she didn't blink. When she was calm, she didn't hold back. When she was regretful, she was still free and easy. Such a Chu Qingyan made the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom see her in a new light. If Jiao was half as perceptive as you, she wouldn't have been deceived by Jiang Yutong until now. The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom sighed. Chu Qingyan shook her head and smiled. Your Majesty, in fact, the third princess is already very good. She is pure, kind, and beautiful. It's not an exaggeration to use any beautiful word on her. I admire her very much. She has a firm will and is open-minded when talking and laughing. The third princess is able to endure the overbearing death poison. It's enough for many men in the world to admit defeat. The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom glanced at her. Don't think that I will agree just because you praised Jiao. Chu Qingyan spread her hands, indicating that she was sincere. The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom stopped teasing her. I will give you an answer tomorrow. As soon as he finished speaking, it meant that the negotiation was over. Although the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom didn't agree, Chu Qingyan wasn't worried at all, because if the Emperor of Jiang Kingdom didn't agree, he could reject her on the spot. When they walked out of the third princess inner palace, Cheng Yinluo patted her chest and heaved a sigh of relief. Her eyes shone as she looked at Chu Qingyan. Little lass, I realize that you're always very quick-witted at crucial moments. Where did you learn to be so calm and collected? I felt that you were shining just now. Chu Qingyan reached out and moved Cheng Yinluo's hand away from her head. She adjusted her hat before replying in all seriousness. This is innate. It can't be learned, so give up. As soon as she finished her pretentious words, she immediately received a slap. Chu Qingyan covered her head and rolled her eyes. She turned around and saw Cheng Yinluo flinging her wrist. She said in disdain, Big sister, I realize that you were talking nonsense again just now. You're probably not clear-headed. Wake up. Chu Qingyan sighed. She felt that it wasn't good to have violent tendencies. The two of them walked out of the palace. Su Jian was already waiting there. Great master, I'm really sorry. I almost implicated you. Chu Qingyan's tone was apologetic. Su Jian smiled faintly. It's fine. As long as the third princess is safe, nothing else matters. Chu Qingyan nodded, and the group boarded the carriage. Great master, if the third princess recovers, where will you go in the future? Back to the Sichuan? She knew that he had been invited to Jiang Kingdom. If the third princess was cured of her poison and recovered, then his responsibilities would be over. That was why she couldn't help but ask curiously. This poor monk hasn't thought about this problem. However, this poor monk hasn't traveled for many years. Perhaps I will wander the world. Su Jian pondered carefully before replying with a faint smile. That's good. Perhaps we will bump into each other on the road in the future. Chu Qingyan deliberately emphasized the word bump into each other. Who knew if he would suddenly appear in front of her again? Su Jian nodded with a smile, but didn't reply. No one could say for sure what would happen in the future. After Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yinluo returned to the E-residence, they went straight to Big Ice Cube and told him about what had happened in the palace. Big Ice Cube, thank you for reminding me. Otherwise, the one who would be locked up in the prison today would not be Jiang Yutong, but your poor little fellow. Chu Qingyan hugged his arm. feeling wronged and fearful after the ordeal. In front of outsiders, she was always fearless and calm. Only in front of Xiao Su did she act coquettishly like a little girl. Xiao Su patted her head and comforted her. You did well. Really well. It was beyond his imagination. Chu Qingyan, who had been praised, was delighted. The next day, a secret edict came from the palace. The Emperor of Jiang Kingdom wanted to see her, and Big Ice Cube. Chu Qingyan was bewildered. Chapter 484. Xiao Su was not surprised by the order, but Chu Qingyan was pacing back and forth in the hall, feeling uneasy. Little princess, what are you pacing about for? After hearing what happened in the Jiang Kingdom's imperial palace, Turin admired little princess very much. Seeing her fidgeting, he could not help but ask. Chu Qingyan immediately sighed. Didn't the Jiang Kingdom's emperor summon your highness to the imperial palace? For no reason. I'm worried that he's up to no good. But looking at Xiao Su, who was sitting peacefully in the chair, it was as if the emperor was not worried, but the eunuch was worried. The Big Ice Cube did not seem to be worried at all. Don't worry too much. We'll know when we get there. Xiao Su was a little helpless at her inexplicable worry. Aren't you afraid of a trap? Chu Qingyan walked in front of him, put her face close to his, and asked seriously. Xiao Su raised his hand and pinched her face. It was very soft and smooth. He smiled faintly. You think too much. Jiang Xiong was an all-powerful hero of a generation more than 10 years ago. He had heard of his deeds since he was a child. Influenced by what he heard and saw, he had a feeling of mutual appreciation. He once thought that if he could meet him in his lifetime, he would be lucky. It seemed that Jiang Xiong was just curious about him and wanted to see him as a junior. Chu Qingyan grimaced in pain from his pinch. She did not have time to think about anything else. She was busy struggling with his hands and did not continue to discuss with him. But this time, Xiao Su was wrong. Perhaps Jiang Xiong's initial idea was indeed so, but sometimes plans could not keep up with changes. When it was almost time, Chu Qingyan, Xiao Su, and Cheng Yinluo entered the Jiang Kingdom's imperial palace together. The palace servant led them to a magnificent palace. As soon as they entered the palace, they saw Jiang Xiong, the emperor of Jiang Kingdom, drinking tea alone. Xiao Su walked forward slowly and bowed slightly. Xiao Su greets your majesty. Chu Qingyan and the others followed suit. Jiang Xiong put down the teacup, his eyes scrutinizing the person in the middle of the hall. He knew that Xiao Su had been disfigured when he was young, so at this time he should have changed his appearance. Although there was nothing special about his appearance, but from the moment he walked in, he had already begun to pay attention to him. He walked slowly and calmly. His attitude was neither servile nor overbearing, and his expression was cold and indifferent. But the aura of a king hidden at the bottom of his eyes was still captured by him. His black robe could not conceal his outstanding, heroic bearing. Xiao Su raised his head and met his gaze. Chu Qingyan felt as if there was a buzzing sound in the air. This was a collision of auras that could only be felt between two experts. Jiang Xiong had been in the imperial palace for many years. Although his domineering aura was restrained, one could still feel the awe-inspiring aura of his years on the battlefield. When the two kings met, Chu Qingyan felt as if there was a gust of wind blowing their robes. She could not help but wonder if this was the special effect of the protagonists. I've heard a lot about the King of England. The two sides only looked at each other for a moment. Then Jiang Xiong invited them to sit down, and the palace servants appeared with tea. Everyone lifted the lid of the cup, and the fragrance of the tea filled the air, adding a little warmth to the solemn palace. Back then, I was only in my 20s when I conquered the country, but you became famous a few years ago. Now you're only in your 20s. It's true that heroes come from the young since ancient times. My two princes are about the same age as you, but they're not as famous as you. Jiang Xiong spoke first, with a little emotion in his tone. Xiao Su was calm and composed, as if the two were just chatting. In fact, they were chatting. The two princes are talented and intelligent, and they are deeply loved by the people. It's enough to see that they will be the pillars of the Jiang Kingdom in the future. Xiao Su replied lightly. If one looked carefully at his expression, one could feel his indifference. Jiang Xiong narrowed his eyes. It was not said that Xiao Su was a man of few words, but now listening to him speak, his politeness was not worse than his. Could it be that the news was wrong? Jiang Xiong did not know. If he had met Xiao Su a year ago, he would have been a man of few words. But now, with Chu Qingyan, Xiao Su had dissipated some of the indifference of the past. He was still cold to others, but Jiang Xiong was the person he had heard the most legendary stories about since he was a child. And before entering the palace, the little fellow had told him repeatedly that he must not have a conflict with Jiang Xiong, because people under the eaves had to bow their heads. Although Xiao Su did not take it seriously, since the little fellow was so concerned, he reluctantly talked with him. Before, it was said that the two kings could not tolerate each other. That was why she was worried. However, when Chu Qingyan saw that the two of them were conversing harmoniously, her heart finally relaxed. However, in the blink of an eye, the two of them had already gone from exchanging pleasantries to discussing the formation of the three armies, as well as their understanding of the art of war. Chu Qingyan blinked as she was completely confused. In the end, she gave up and left Xiao Su alone as she went to Jiang Yunyao's sleeping quarters with Yen Luo. For the next 3 days, Jiang Yunyao would need to undergo acupuncture treatment in order to completely eradicate the vast death poison. Because of the vast death poison, Jiang Yunyao's bedchamber had been moved to another palace, which was very close to here, so they arrived after a few steps. When they entered the palace, Jiang Yunyao had already woken up and was drinking medicine. When she saw Chu Qingyan and the others, she greeted them with a smile. "Miss Chu, Miss Chung, you are here." This was a princess without the airs of a princess, Chu Qingyan thought. "Third princess, are you feeling better?" Chu Qingyan stood in front of her and asked with concern. Jiang Yunyao nodded. "It's rare that I didn't have nightmares last night. It's been a long time since I had a dreamless night." Chu Qingyan saw that her complexion had improved, but there was still a hint of sorrow in her eyes. She was probably still upset because of Jiang Yutong's betrayal. "Once the remaining poison is removed and you have a good rest, your Highness's body will slowly recover," Cheng Yin Luo said with a smile. "It's all thanks to you guys. Otherwise, I might still be in a daze at the gates of hell," Jiang Yunyao said self-deprecatingly. Such a fairy-like and kind-hearted woman easily attracted the love and pity of others, and Chu Qingyan was no exception. Seeing that she was in low spirits, Chu Qingyan took the initiative to chat with her. Because Chu Qingyan's words were humorous and could always make her laugh, she soon forgot the knot in her heart and talked about the past. After talking with her, Chu Qingyan realized that Jiang Yunyao was not as weak as she appeared to be. Not only could she ride a horse, but she could also draw a bow and shoot arrows. Some of the nobles in the Sichuan kingdom were simply miles ahead of her. When Cheng Yin Luo was inserting the silver needles into Jiang Yunyao's body, Jiang Yunyao lay on the bed and looked at Chu Qingyan with a gentle smile. "I heard that you need the ice crystal flower. It's my imperial father's favorite. Did he agree to it yesterday?" "Favorite? Does that mean I can't get the ice crystal flower?" Chu Qingyan frowned and looked troubled. Chapter 485. Jiang Yunyao didn't expect her careless words to make Chu Qingyan so worried. She looked apologetic and comforted her. "Don't worry. If it really doesn't work, I can go to my father and ask him to give you the ice crystal flower." Chu Qingyan quickly regained her senses and shook her head at Jiang Yunyao. "Thank you, third princess, but there's no need for now. If His Majesty is really unwilling, we'll trouble you again. Although a gentleman doesn't take what others like, this concerns the safety of my prince. Qingyan can only be thick-skinned. You care a lot about your prince?" The girl in front of her was only 10 years old, but she knew how to fight for others wholeheartedly. "Besides my parents, he's the person who treats me the best in this world. So no matter what herb he needs, I'll do my best to get it for him." Chu Qingyan raised the corner of her lips and revealed a gentle smile. These words touched Jiang Yunyao. Back then, if he was willing to be honest with her and say that he needed the 9 days due, she would have persuaded Imperial Father to give it to him no matter what. However, He always hid everything in his heart and did not tell her anything. In fact, it was all her wishful thinking in the beginning. She just didn't wake up until the wedding. His silence really sent her from the clouds to hell. It turned out that everything was just her one-man show. However, as a princess, she had her own dignity and pride. As long as it didn't belong to her, she wouldn't force it. This was the difference between her and Jiang Yutong. While Jiang Yunyao was in a daze, Cheng Yinluo had already removed the silver needles from her body. As she kept the needles, she said to Jiang Yunyao, "Third princess, I'll help you with acupuncture for 2 more days. After that, you'll have to supplement it with medicinal soup for 2 more days. The remaining poison in your body will be cleansed." Jiang Yunyao gathered her sleeves and slowly sat up. At this moment, she was no longer as tired and weak as before. She was full of energy. She said gratefully to Cheng Yinluo, "Thank you for your trouble, Miss Cheng. I'm happy to be of service to the beauty." Perhaps because Jiang Yunyao was as easy to get along with as the little sister next door, Cheng Yinluo's teasing personality was exposed again. He did not deliberately follow any etiquette. Jiang Yunyao's face turned red from her teasing. Chu Qingyin couldn't help but cover her mouth. She really thought that Jiang Yunyao was a girl who got shy easily. Since it was still early and Xiao Su and Jiang Xiong didn't say when their conversation would end, when Jiang Yunyao said that she wanted to go out for a walk, Chu Qingyin gladly accompanied her. Cheng Yinluo, on the other hand, went to the Imperial Academy of Medicine with the palace servants because she had to prepare the herbs for Jiang Yunyao for the next 2 days. Jiang Yunyao was supported by Ru Yue, while Chu Qingyin walked happily at the side. When Jiang Yunyao saw the flowers, trees, and butterflies outside the palace, she was slightly excited. Every time she saw a flower, she would stop and admire it for a while before continuing on. Chu Qingyin could understand her feelings at this time. She hadn't walked out of the palace for nearly 2 years. It could be said that she was basically isolated from the world. She was sick and weak all day long. Time passed by in bed. Chu Qingyin looked at the beautiful girl who was as beautiful as a flower walking through the flowers and felt a faint sense of pity in her heart. After being tortured by the disease for so long, she could still maintain her original heart, which was very commendable. In the modern world, she had seen many people who were angry, autistic, depressed, and even committed suicide due to illness. Looking at Jiang Yunyao now, she was very glad that this beautiful girl was still as quiet as a blue celestial flower. She was patient, optimistic, and motivated. After the disease was defeated, she glowed with a dazzling radiance, like an orchid, and a fragrance overflowed. Qingyin, the sky is so blue, the flowers are so fragrant, the clouds are so white, and the world is so beautiful. Jiang Yunyao stood in the imperial garden after letting go of Ryue's hand. She turned around and smiled sweetly at Chu Qingyin. Suddenly, her smile bloomed like a flower, and her voice was sweet and melodious. In the world, she was the only snow-white person who stood alone from the world. The beauty was like a flower separated by the clouds. If she was in Jiang Yunyao's place, she would think that this person was very silly. The sky and clouds were originally this color. But now, when she saw the person walking among the flowers, she only felt that she saw a girl who was suddenly reborn. For nearly 2 years, I spent in bed. The imperial physician also didn't allow me to open the window. I didn't know whether it was sunny or snowing outside, whether it was spring or withered leaves on the branches. I didn't know. I could only imagine it through the palace maid's descriptions. Now I can finally see it with my own eyes again. I'm really moved. Jiang Yunyao clasped her hands in front of her chest, and her face was full of sincerity. Chu Qingyin was moved by her words. She walked towards Jiang Yunyao, and in her hand was a blue impatience flower that she had just plucked for her. She presented it in front of Jiang Yunyao and smiled brightly. "Third princess, all the haze has passed. Those who hurt you have left. Those who are left are those who care about you. Fate has arranged it so that we can learn how to grow. No matter if we fall or crawl up, no matter if we are hurt or grieved, no matter if we're lost or happy, in the end, what remains is a better version of us." After she finished speaking, Chu Qingyin tilted her head and smiled. Third princess, congratulations. You have been reborn. Jiang Yunyao looked deeply at the exquisite and adorable girl in front of her. The wound in her heart slowly healed because of her words. She took the flower and solemnly said, "Thank you, Qingyin. You're welcome." Chu Qingyin rubbed her nose. It wasn't her style to be emotional. It was just that she was affected by Jiang Yunyao's emotions just now, and couldn't help but be artistic. Jiang Yunyao held the blue impatience flower and smiled. "Qingyin, why don't you stay with me today? I like you very much. I like listening to you and chatting with you very much." Chu Qingyin thought for a moment, then blinked and said, "I will ask His Highness later to see if I can stay." Jiang Yunyao smiled. "It seems that there is still someone who can tame a little rascal like you." At this moment, the two people sitting in the pavilion near the Imperial Garden were watching the movements of the two girls below. Jiang Xiong looked at his daughter, who was smiling so happily for the first time in 2 years. His heart was filled with emotions. If it wasn't for Jiang Yutong and that brat from the Tang family, he wouldn't have let his daughter suffer like this. "Your little princess consort is quite clever," Jiang Xiong said ambiguously. Xiao Su raised his brows. "She's a little stupid. Your Majesty, please forgive her. I think she's quite good. Your imperial grandfather has good taste." Jiang Xiong smiled. Xiao Su didn't know why Jiang Xiong kept talking about the little fellow. He picked up the teacup and didn't intend to continue the conversation. Jiang Xiong suddenly stopped smiling, and his expression turned serious. It was the first time he had mentioned the ice crystal flower today. "I know your goal is the ice crystal flower. It is not impossible to give it to you, but I have a condition. Please speak." Xiao Su looked at him indifferently. "Use 1 ice crystal flower in exchange for your little princess consort accompanying Jiao for 3 years. How about it?" Jiang Xiong asked as he played with the teacup in his hand. Chapter 486. After accompanying Jiang Yunyao for a while longer, Chu Qingyin sent her back to her sleeping quarters. Under her repeated reminders, Chu Qingyin agreed in amusement, saying that she would definitely ask for Xiao Su's opinion. Then she left the hall, intending to ask the palace servants about Xiao Su's whereabouts. Unexpectedly, the moment she came out, she saw a person standing at the door with his hands clasped behind his back, as if waiting for her. She curved her lips and quickly walked towards him. "Big Ice Cube, when did you come? You didn't let anyone in to tell me. I thought you were still chatting with His Majesty of Jiang Kingdom." Hearing this, Xiao Su turned to look at her. With his back facing the setting sun, his young body was enveloped in a circle of golden light as he jumped up and down. His heart trembled slightly. It was this seemingly thin and weak body that contained a powerful strength that pulled him out of the abyss. She was the only one, a gift given to him by the heavens. He would never give her up, even if it was only for 3 years. 3 days. He would not allow her to be used in exchange for anything, even if it was his life. He was this kind of person. He would rather bear all the pain himself than let the people he cared about suffer in silence. "Little fellow, come here." The voice seemed to come from the bottom of the ancient pond. It was a little light, and then it rippled on the surface of the water, spreading in her heart little by little. She did not know why the big ice cube suddenly became depressed, but at this moment, he was facing the setting sun. The light enveloped his entire body, and the sunlight shone into his eyes. Xianmo's eyes were misty at this moment, and she could not see his expression clearly. Her heart hesitated, but she still walked towards him step by step. Her hands were clasped behind her back, looking very obedient. "Big Ice Cube, what's wrong?" "That's right. The third princess wants me to stay in the palace to accompany her today. What do you think?" She raised her head, but before she could take in his expression, a black shadow suddenly covered her. Before she could react, she was already in his arms. Xiao Su's sudden action caused Chu Qingyin to be at a loss. "Big Ice Cube, what happened?" Just as she finished speaking, she heard his deep voice ring in her ear. "Not good. Not good. What's wrong with that? Are you not feeling well?" Chu Qingyin was so scared that she wanted to break free from his arms to see what was wrong with him. But the person hugging her his hands were as firm as iron, holding her in his embrace. His chin rested on the top of her head, making her unable to resist. "Don't stay. Even as an exchange, I won't allow it." Xiao Su tightened his grip, as if he was holding onto a treasure that could leave him at any time. He was so tender that he couldn't bear to let go. Chu Qingyan was confused by his incoherent words, but she understood that he didn't want her to stay in the palace overnight. Chu Qingyan didn't think it was a big deal, but the big ice cube's reaction was not a small matter in her eyes. "If I don't stay, what are you worried about, big ice cube?" Chu Qingyan asked in his arms. She would suffocate if she continued to be hugged by the big ice cube. Could he let her catch her breath first? Perhaps sensing her discomfort, Xiao Su loosened his grip and let her out of his embrace. Looking at the little fellow with messy hair in front of him, Xiao Su was a bit shocked. He seemed to have lost control of his emotions just now. This was the first time that he didn't control his emotions well. As a commander, the most taboo thing was to show his emotions on the surface, so he was often strict with himself and didn't allow his emotions to be exposed. But just now, he had violated a military taboo. But when that pair of wet eyes looked at him helplessly, Xiao Su couldn't help but reach out to smooth out her messy hair. He had almost forgotten that he had already left the Sichuan. Perhaps in the future, he wouldn't have the chance to lead an army, so why was he still so restrained? "Big Ice Cube, what's wrong? Don't scare me." Chu Qingyan felt that something was wrong with him and couldn't help but ask again. "I'm fine." Xiao Su helped her smooth out her long hair and casually replied. Chu Qingyan didn't believe him. She clenched her hands into fists and said angrily, "Is that Jiang country's emperor making things difficult for you? Tell me. I'll help you beat him up." Hearing her childish words, Xiao Su couldn't help but smile. He took her hand and slowly walked out of the palace. "Do I look like someone who would be made things difficult for?" Chu Qingyan immediately shook her head, but she was still worried. The big ice cube's sudden change in mood must be related to Jiang Xiao. Otherwise, why would the big ice cube seem to have changed into a different person when they just came out of his place? "Big Ice Cube, tell me the truth. If you are bullied, I won't laugh at you. I will help you bully back." Chu Qingyan grabbed his arm and comforted him. Xiao Su's face was covered with black lines. The little fellow thought that he was too weak. It seemed that it was time to correct her perception. "Watch the road. Don't jump around." Xiao Su educated her. When Chu Qingyan heard this familiar tone, she sighed in relief. Her normal big ice cube was finally back. His gloomy appearance just now was really not like him. The two of them chatted like this, and Chu Qingyan's mind was completely focused on Xiao Su. She didn't notice that the two of them were fighting. At this moment, holding hands had nothing to do with. It was only because they were accompanying each other and didn't want to be separated. Not long after the two of them left, Jiang Xiong came to Jiang Yunyao's palace. "Imperial Father, why are you here? Are you done with the matters of the court?" Jiang Yunyao was holding a book in her hand. She sat on a chair and leaned against the window sill, quietly flipping through the book. Inadvertently, she saw a long shadow on the ground. When she raised her head and saw who it was, she called out in surprise. Jiang Xiong pressed down on her shoulder as she was about to stand up and salute, then sat down on the chair in front of her. He smiled affectionately, completely without the arrogance of a country's monarch. "What do you feel about today's treatment?" "I feel better than a few days ago. I feel much better. I have to say that Miss Cheng's medical skills are really brilliant." Jiang Yunyao praised sincerely. Then she continued, "Also, I found that Miss Chu is a rare good girl. Daughter, and she hit it off very well. Daughter originally wanted to invite her to stay tonight, but she had something to do and left first. However, she promised Daughter that she would come to the palace tomorrow. Daughter is very happy." Seeing the long-lost smile on her face, Jiang Xiong's iron-blooded heroism also melted into a soft touch. "If Miss Chu can stay in the palace to accompany you in the future, would you be happy?" he asked tentatively. "Very good. Daughter has never had many friends. It's rare to meet a friend with a similar temperament. Although she is younger than Daughter by a few years, there is no generation gap between us. Moreover, she is very good at taking care of people. It's the first time I've seen such a sensible little girl. Speaking of Chu Qingyan, Jiang Yunyao was full of praise. Good. Then Imperial Father will let her stay with you. Jiang Xiong seemed to have made a decision, as he said seriously to her. Chapter 487. When her father said that he would let Qingyan stay with her, she couldn't help but think back to the time when he said the same thing. Then, there was the imperial edict to bestow marriage. Jiang Yunyao was stunned and recovered from her joy. Father, Miss Chu still wants to return to Sichuan. How can you let her stay? When Jiang Xiong heard her words, he hesitated for a moment. He wanted to gloss over it, but when he saw his daughter's pure eyes, he thought of Tang Qingchong and couldn't bear to lie to her anymore. It could be considered as a negotiation. She needs the ice crystal flower to treat Xiao Su's illness. You need a friend. Before Jiang Xiong could finish his words, Jiang Yunyao's expression had already changed. She immediately interrupted him and said righteously, Imperial Father, if you still want to use the means of a deal to force them to agree, I will look down on you. Jiang Xiong didn't expect her to be so resolute and didn't know what to say for a moment. Perhaps sensing that her tone was too unyielding, Jiang Yunyao immediately softened her tone. She pursed her lips and gently reasoned with him. Imperial Father, a daughter is already grown up. There are many things that I can do on my own. Whether it is getting married or making friends, I have my own judgment. You only need to focus on the affairs of the imperial court. There is no need to worry too much. Jiang Yunyao put down the book in her hand and reached out to hold the big hand in front of her. She said coquettishly, Your daughter is favored by the heavens. What do you need to force others to do? Qingyan is a very good person, and I like her very much. However, this should not be a reason for me to restrict her from staying by my side. You see, the bird flying in the sky is very intelligent, and I like it very much. However, if you capture it and place it in a cage for me, because of this, then you would be breaking its wings. Daughter likes the way it flies, and not the way it looks when it is unhappy in a cage. Therefore, Emperor Father, daughter is already a young lady and can make her own decisions. I can work hard to obtain what I want. Can you just watch me from the side, unless I ask you for help? Jiao, do you really think so? Jiang Xiong had the illusion that his daughter had just grown up. Jiang Yunyao nodded heavily. She changed her tone and said in a low voice, Because I don't want the past to repeat itself. Jiang Xiong was slightly startled, and it took him a while to realize what she was referring to. His heart was filled with self-reproach again, and he couldn't help but reach out to pull his thin daughter into his arms. Patting her back, he said guiltily, All right, in the future, you can make your own decisions. Imperial Father will no longer order you around. Everything will go according to your wishes. Imperial Father, you really are the best father in the world. Jiang Yunyao's eyes were wet. She blinked and didn't forget to say, Then Imperial Father, you should give the ice crystal flower to Qingyan. They also saved my life. Just take it as a gift in return. Jiang Xiong stroked his daughter's long hair and smiled helplessly. His daughter did not inherit his heart of stone, but inherited her mother's kindness. All right, Imperial Father promises you, but you have to wait until the poison in your body is completely cured. Thank you, Imperial Father. Jiang Yunyao gladly agreed. The next day, she went to the palace. Originally not on the summons list, the big ice cube also went. Chu Qingyan was a bit surprised. The big ice cube was not the kind of person who liked to interact with the people in the palace. Although she was curious, Chu Qingyan didn't ask any more questions. Knowing that Xiao Su was going to the palace, Jiang Xiong, who had nothing to do, still invited him over. He said that he wanted to let the two princes compete with him. Chu Qingyan felt that this was pretty good. It would let him move his muscles and bones, so the big ice cube would have nothing to do. Jiang Yunyao's body recovered very quickly. When they met today, Chu Qingyan felt that her complexion was much better. Her previously pale cheeks now had a pink color. It was really a feast for the eyes. Chu Qingyan smiled at her. Third princess, you look better and better. If you work hard to take care of yourself, you will be as radiant as before. Chu Qingyan's teasing made Jiang Yunyao laugh. Ryue, who was beside her, had a better impression of Chu Qingyan. She poured a cup of tea for Chu Qingyan and said with a smile, "Every time Miss Chu comes, you can make our princess happy. Just now, before you arrived, our princess was looking at the door of the hall eagerly. Every once in a while, she asked me when you would arrive. It shows how much she misses you." As soon as Ryue finished her words, Jiang Yunyao glared at her. "You talk too much." Ryue stuck out her tongue and slipped away to do her work. Chu Qingyan leaned on the table and watched Yin Luo perform acupuncture. She chatted with Jiang Yunyao. "Third princess, do you feel like you have been away for 3 years if you don't see me for one day?" As soon as she finished her words, Yin Luo couldn't help rubbing her arms. "Little girl, can you not say such horrible words? I have goosebumps. This is called hitting it off with third princess. Do you know that there are so many people in the world who pass by, and you know how many of them will become close friends at glance? Maybe it's a once-in-a-thousand-years chance." Chu Qingyan shook her head and said slowly, "To be honest, I also feel that I hit it off with Qingyan. Although we have only met a few times, once we talk, we feel familiar with each other. This is fate." Jiang Yunyao smiled and continued Chu Qingyan's words. Her eyes were curved like the bright crescent moon in the sky. Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. "I second it." Yin Luo shook her head when she saw the two of them singing together. These two girls were hopeless. But after laughing, Yin Luo put away the silver needles and left the bedchamber for the Imperial Institute of Medicine. It was said that she had found a lot of rare herbs and planned to study them. So, Chu Qingyan and Jiang Yunyao were left in the room again. Jiang Yunyao tidied up her clothes and took Chu Qingyan out of the bedchamber. Since she could walk, she liked to go out and didn't want to stay in the room. In a small pavilion, Jiang Yunyao took the fish food prepared by Ryue. She leaned against the railing and fed the fish little by little. Chu Qingyan stood beside the leisurely Jiang Yunyao, but her thoughts were far away. Last night, she asked Big Ice about the ice crystal flower, but he said that he got nothing. He also forbade her to mention the ice crystal flower to the royal family of the Jiang kingdom. Otherwise, he would punish her by copying books. This matter had troubled her for the whole night, and she still couldn't find the answer. Jiang Yunyao turned around and saw her in a daze. She couldn't help but put down the fish food in her hand and said with a smile, "Are you worried about the ice crystal flower?" Chu Qingyan returned to her senses and touched her face. Confused, she asked, "Am I that obvious?" Jiang Yunyao nodded seriously and pointed at her cheek. "It says I want the ice crystal flower here." Chu Qingyan couldn't help laughing. Sometimes Jiang Yunyao was quite cute, just like now. "Tomorrow, I'll ask my father to give you the ice crystal flower. Don't worry," Jiang Yunyao said seriously. Chu Qingyan was shocked by the sudden good news. After a while, she came to herself. "Thank you, third princess." Her eyes were wet and inadvertently reddened. "Don't be happy so early. I need your help." Jiang Yunyao looked at her ecstatic and couldn't help laughing. "Not to mention one. I can help you with hundreds of things." Chu Qingyan was incoherent. Chapter 488. Chu Qingyan's naivety made Jiang Yunyao smile. She leaned against the railing and slowly propped up her upper body with a longing look. "I haven't been out of the palace for a long time. I want to invite you to go with me. What do you think?" "I see. No problem. But I'm not familiar with the capital. I may need you, the local, to lead the way," Chu Qingyan said with a smile. She didn't expect Jiang Yunyao's condition was this. In fact, even if Jiang Yunyao didn't exchange, she would agree, because she really liked this simple and beautiful girl. Chu Qingyan, who was in a good mood, took the fish food from Ryue's hand and began to play with the fish below. "Princess, where do you want to go?" "Just walk around casually." Jiang Yunyao held her chin and thought carefully. "I don't know if there are any changes outside since I haven't been out for a long time. Seeing is believing." Chu Qingyan winked at her. So on the third day, the two appeared in the bustling streets of the capital. Jiang Yunyao and Ryue were followed by 3 or 4 bodyguards in casual clothes, while Chu Qingyan was followed by Xining and Jin Xian. Chu Qingyan knew that there were palace guards hiding in the dense crowd to protect Jiang Yunyao secretly. This was Jiang Xiong's condition. She could go out, but she must take enough people with her. Looking at Jiang Yunyao, who looked like she had been released from a cage, Chu Qingyan's lips curled into a faint smile. Although Jiang Yunyao looked gentle and steady, she was still a young lady in her late 20s. Curiosity and exhilaration were still the main themes of her age. I know a jewelry store that is very good. I'll take you there. Jiang Yunyao took her hand and went to the treasure store. Could the treasure pavilion be the place where Tang Qingchong had been waiting for a long time? Chu Qingyan vaguely had this idea, but was soon attracted by Jiang Yunyao's other words. The two were like two sisters who had a close relationship. They laughed and chatted with each other as they went to the treasure store. In the restaurant, Tang Qingchong came to the restaurant as usual, and the waiter served his wine and dishes with familiarity. He still sat in a position where he could see the treasure pavilion across from him and drank cup after cup. This was already the umpteenth time in the past 2 years. Every time, he would come with a heart full of anticipation and then leave with a heart full of disappointment. That young girl with bright eyes never appeared again after the wedding. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of entering the palace to look for her, but his father had suddenly told him vaguely one day that His Majesty didn't allow him to look for her. When the imperial edict came down, he had the thought of rejecting it. But when she lifted the veil and told him that she wouldn't force him, his heart felt as if it had cracked open. Countless cold winds poured in, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. It turned out that it wasn't that he didn't like her, but that he understood it too late. He drank another glass of wine. The burning sensation traveled from his tongue to his throat. For the past 2 years, he had been sober as he watched himself sink into depravity. When he placed his hand on the jug and was about to pour the wine, a beautiful figure suddenly flashed in front of his eyes. His fingers on the jug suddenly began to tremble. Xiao? Was it her? He wiped his eyes, thinking that she would disappear again like before, but when he opened his eyes again, that flower-like smiling face was like an arrow, piercing straight into his heart. He suddenly stood up. The wine jug spilled, and the table made an ear-piercing sound. But he didn't feel it at all. He quickly walked out of the restaurant and strode towards the treasure pavilion across the street. A carriage came and almost knocked into the distracted Tang Qingchong. Only then did Tang Qingchong come back to his senses. If he went over so rashly, would she talk to him? For the first time in more than 10 years, the calm and reserved Tang Qingchong had stage fright. At this time, he didn't know if it was because she felt his gaze or if it was by accident, but Jiang Yunyao, who was about to enter the treasure pavilion, suddenly turned her head and saw the person she hadn't dared to think about in the past 2 years. Liking someone so much that in the vast crowd, the first person I saw was only you. Jiang Yunyao forgot to walk and just stared at him with her eyes wide open. He was dressed in green and had black hair. His face was bright and handsome. His jade-like face was fair and gentle. His cold temperament was like the cool breeze at the first light of dawn. 2 years had passed, and he still hadn't changed. But the way he looked at her seemed a bit different. But so what if it was different? Maybe it was because she had hurt his face by breaking off the engagement on the spot. He probably already hated her. And in Tang Qingchong's eyes, even though they were separated by the crowd, her appearance still clearly fell into his eyes. Her features were picturesque, and her skin was like warm jade with a soft glow. She wore a snow-white long dress that reached her ankles and a pair of small deerskin boots. Her long hair hung down, and the hair on both sides of her head was divided into several braids. There weren't many decorations on her head, only a snow-white hairband that wrapped around her hair. She was as fresh as a fairy. Her appearance didn't seem to have changed much in the past 2 years. She had just lost a lot of weight. In the past, he could still see the pink flesh on her cheeks, but now it was all gone. Looking at her at this time, Tang Qingchong's heart was filled with layers of pity. Chu Qingyan, who was standing at the side, saw the two of them silently separated by the crowd and couldn't help but sigh. This must be a reunion after a long separation. Unfortunately, they didn't excitedly greet each other, nor did they express their feelings. They just looked at each other in silence. "Do you want to say hello?" Chu Qingyin couldn't stand the stifling atmosphere between the two of them and smiled to break the deadlock. Hearing Chu Qingyin's words, Jiang Yunyao regained her senses and realized that she had been in a daze for a long time. She hurriedly retracted her gaze and lowered her head slightly. She said to Chu Qingyin, "No need, let's go in." He had imagined countless times that they would meet, but he never thought that it would be like this. She clearly saw him, but turned a blind eye. Tang Qingchong watched her figure disappear behind the door and felt a dull pain in his heart. Was Xiao still angry with him? Had she already given up on him? Was it? He didn't dare to think about it anymore. Perhaps no one would have thought that the dignified and elegant young master of the capital would be at a loss and worried about personal gains and losses on this never-ending road. He's second young master Tang, right? Chu Qingyin asked in a questioning and affirmative tone. Jiang Yunyao was slightly stunned when she heard his name. Then her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled and said, "It's him. He's also the young man I've liked for 16 years. It was no big deal to admit it. It's just that after leaving the Prime Minister's residence that day, I've already decided to give up on him." Chu Qingyin felt a little sad when she heard this. After liking him for so long, it must be very painful to let him go just like that. Second young Master Tang? Chu Qingyin looked to the side and saw Tang Qingchong standing at the side. She exclaimed in surprise. Jiang Yunyao's body stiffened. Then she slowly followed Chu Qingyin's line of sight. "Young, second young Master Tang." She lowered her head slightly and said politely yet uncomfortably. The two of them were clearly standing so close, but it was as if they were worlds apart. Chapter 489. Second young Master Tang? These 4 words were what other people called him. He had heard it many times and got used to it. However, what he couldn't get used to was that these 4 words came out of her mouth. Because, since they were young, she didn't call him that. When she was 3 or 4 years old, she didn't know how to pronounce his name. So, she separated his name. She followed him all day long and called him Brother Yongri. At that time, it was very annoying. Now, when he heard these 4 words from her mouth, Tang Qingchong's heart suddenly sank. It seemed that many things were only cherished when they were lost. He heard her say that she was tired, so the people around her sent her back. When they passed by, he wanted to reach out to hold her and ask her how she had been in the past 2 years. But his hands were heavy and he couldn't lift them up. Was it because he couldn't lift them up or didn't dare to? Was he afraid that he couldn't say it or that she wouldn't answer? Tang Qingchong clenched his fingers and his mood instantly sank to the bottom. After some time, he turned around and couldn't see her figure anymore. Tang Qingchong returned to his room like a walking corpse. He threw himself on the bed, but the words he heard in the shop echoed in his ears. "It was him, the young man I liked for 16 years. But after leaving the Prime Minister's mansion that day, I decided to give up on him. Frankly said that I liked him and resolutely said to let him go." She had always been like this. In the past, when she chased after him, she had never concealed her feelings for him. Whether he responded or not, she was happy with herself. Now, she said that she wanted to give up on him. His heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. On the day of the wedding, the MC said several times that the couple should bow to each other, but she didn't move. All the guests were silent. He wanted to tell her to stop fooling around at this time, but he heard her say seriously under the red veil, "Yongri, are you willing to take me as your wife? This is a marriage bestowed. Don't fool around. If you marry me, will my father give you the 9 days due?" "Yes." As soon as he finished speaking, he vaguely felt the figure in front of him shake slightly. Suddenly, she lifted the veil. Her usually smiling eyes were full of tears, but she held them back. "Since you don't like me, then I won't like you anymore." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned to face all the guests present and said loudly, "Due to personal reasons, I am unable to hold the wedding. This princess is willing to give the 9 days due as an apology gift to the Tang family." After she finished speaking, she resolutely turned around without hesitation. Everything happened so quickly that he didn't have any time to react. He could only watch her leave quickly. Every time he recalled the scene that day, He could not forget the red veil left behind by his master. Tang Ching-chong covered his eyes with his hands and smiled bitterly in his heart. Tang Ching-chong, you reap what you sow. If you hadn't answered in a fit of pique, would the ending have been different? No one gave him an answer, because no one could give him an answer. On the other side, Chu Qingyan felt that Jiang Yunyao had been in low spirits ever since they left Zhanbao Pavilion. After getting into the carriage, Jiang Yunyao, who had her head lowered, suddenly lost control. She leaned on Chu Qingyan's shoulder and cried loudly. "Third princess, what's wrong?" Chu Qingyan was shocked by her sudden action. "Qingyan, I have already hypnotized myself for nearly 2 years. I thought that I had already forgotten him. I thought that I did it. But after seeing him, those buried memories suddenly flew back to find me. What should I do? What should I do?" Jiang Yunyao cried until her liver and intestines were cut to pieces. She sobbed out the words in her heart. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she knew that it was all because of Tang Ching-chong. What was love in the world? It made people pledge their lives to each other. She didn't understand the feelings between men and women, but she knew that unrequited love, and heartbreak were all very painful things. But she seemed to be able to feel that Tang Ching-chong was interested in her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have wasted so much time waiting for someone to appear. "Third princess, is there a possibility that you two are interested in each other?" Chu Qingyan comforted her and told her guess. Jiang Yunyao wiped her tears and shook her head with a bitter smile. "No. If he liked me, I would have felt it in the past 16 years. Unfortunately, he didn't. So it's impossible now, and even more impossible in the future." The despair in her voice moved Chu Qingyan. "Third princess, don't think too much. You need to recuperate well now. Don't let your emotions fluctuate too much. Taking care of yourself is the most important thing." Jiang Yunyao nodded, but her expression was dazed. Chu Qingyan was worried. After sending her back to the palace, she specially asked Ryue to take good care of her before returning to E-residence. Since leaving the palace yesterday, Big Ice Cube didn't enter the palace with her today after she told her that Jiang Yunyao would give her the ice crystal flower. She found Xiao Su in the courtyard. At this time, he was with her father. She didn't think much and walked to him. Xiao Su knew from the moment she entered the courtyard. At this time, seeing her walk over with a heavy expression, he stopped wiping his sword and asked, "What happened?" Chu Qingyan didn't expect Big Ice Cube to guess that something had happened to her before she said anything. She was secretly surprised. However, she still told him about Jiang Yunyao and Tang Ching-chong. "Big Ice Cube, I think the two of them are a match made in heaven. If they just pass by each other, I will feel very regretful. Then bring them together. Father likes to do this kind of thing the most." Father Chu was squatting at the side and watching his son-in-law wiping his sword. After hearing this, he jumped up happily. Chu Qingyan didn't forget that her father had failed to bring Yin Luo and Ethereal together, as well as Duga Qing and Yiling Feng. But this time, she really wanted to try. "How do you want to do it?" Xiao Su asked directly. "I think there may be a misunderstanding between them. I want to help them solve it. This is all I can do. Do you think I can do it well? Should I not intervene?" Chu Qingyan just had this idea and wanted to find someone to advise her, but the first person she thought of was Big Ice Cube. "Actually, you already have the answer in your heart. If you think it's worth it, then do it." Xiao Su looked into her watery and pure eyes. This little girl was always so kind. "Big Ice Cube, you're the best." Chu Qingyan held his face with both hands and kissed him. Then she quickly walked away. What she wanted was not an opinion, but to be affirmed. Big Ice Cube's words rekindled her confidence. She would do it. Before Xiao Su could come back to his senses, Father Chu had already held his broken heart and cried. "Kai Kai doesn't want me anymore. She doesn't want me anymore now that she has a husband." Boo-hoo. Father Chu saw his daughter kiss his son-in-law and was jealous. Xiao Su was still a little embarrassed, but when he heard Father Chu's words, he couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 490. In this world, other than life and death, the only thing that could not be escaped was love. Duguqing was grooming herself in front of the mirror. Her face had been pale for the past 2 days, so she put on some blush to make herself look more energetic. She knew that Yi Lingfeng would be practicing his sword in his courtyard today. After she changed her clothes, she would go find him. Today, she wanted to make a clean break with him. She did not have any more time to delay. When Yi Lingfeng saw Duguqing suddenly appear in his courtyard, the sword in his hand paused, and he put it away. "Aren't you still recuperating? Why did you come out?" Yi Lingfeng looked at the person in front of him. She was wearing a light yellow dress, and her long hair was tied up into a complicated bun. There were flower beads and tiny hairpins in her hair. There were 2 strands of hair hanging by her cheeks. They fluttered in the breeze and brushed against her cheeks, giving her a flirtatious look. She had a smile on her face, and her eyes were as bright as the moon. She was not as lively as she used to be, jumping right in front of him as soon as she came over. Today, she was unusually quiet. "In these 3 to 4 days, you did not come to see me. Were you really that busy?" She pouted her lips. Her tone was a bit aggrieved, like a child who could not get candy and was acting spoiled to an adult. She slowly walked over step by step, his face slowly becoming clearer in her eyes. Because of the sword practice earlier, his forehead was covered in sweat. Under the sunlight, it was like he was covered in a layer of white light. His face was like jade as he stood tall. She had known him for almost half a year, but every time she saw him, her heart would still beat fast. Knowing that she was blaming him, Yi Lingfeng coughed a few times before replying, "It's cold right now. It's not good for your body. Go back first. I'll come see you when I have time." "When is the time? Later? Tomorrow? Or will we wait forever?" Duguqing blinked, her expression serious as she asked, "Miss Dugu, there are some things that we should know in our hearts. There's no need to say it out loud, otherwise it will be uncomfortable between us." He originally wanted to say a few more perfunctory words, but hearing the hidden meaning in her words, Yi Lingfeng frowned, feeling a bit impatient. Feeling his displeasure, Duguqing felt a little hurt, but she forced herself to look at him seriously. "Lingfeng, I want to ask you something. Can you seriously consider it before you answer?" It was rare to see her so solemn. Yi Lingfeng put away his impatience and stabbed the sword in his hand into the ground, looking at her. "Okay, I like you, but have you ever liked me?" She had asked him this question many times. She had chased after him and pestered him from the imperial capital to the border, and from the border to the imperial capital. She had never given up. She had joked, teased, and casually asked him this question, but she had never asked him this question so seriously. Her eyes were bright and calm. Although there was a trace of shyness, she suppressed it in her eyes. Yi Lingfeng stood rooted to the ground in shock. He wanted to avoid the question again, but the person in front of him was calmly waiting for his answer. If he was reborn at the last minute, it would not be in line with his natural disposition. Finally, he calmed down and used the same serious expression to look at her. This girl was different from the girls he had met in the past. She was strong, humorous, hardworking, and magnanimous. If it was 10 years later, he might have taken her as his wife. But now, he did not want to be tied down so quickly. He wanted the vast world, to soar freely and not to be entrenched in a small piece of land. He heard himself slowly say word by word, "My heart had been moved before, but that was only in the past. You have been by my side for so long. You should know that I am not the kind of person who is forever in love." Although she already knew the answer, but hearing it with her own ears, that kind of overwhelming pain and sadness was enough to drown her. "Can you give it a try? Try to like someone for a long time?" She pursed her lips, throwing away all of her reservations, all of her timidity. She raised her eyebrows, looking at him with bright eyes. This was the first time she was so humble. Her status never allowed her to lower her head. But, she thought, to be able to lose face for the one she loved, that was nothing. Even if she had to give up, she had to give up completely. Her reaction was out of his expectations. If it was those girls in the past, they would have already started to cry and curse him, but no one had ever asked him so seriously, asking him if he wanted to be the same from start to finish and not play around. "But if I tried, I would not be that Lingfeng. His answer was concise and clear, which was his usual style. It was an expected answer. Although she knew it would be like this, but her heart still hurt. Her eyes seemed to be filled with water, wave after wave. She closed her eyes, not allowing herself to cry. She was not a coward. No cursing, no tears. Lingfeng looked at her without blinking. He saw her slowly retreat, standing 3 steps away from him, and then he saw her slowly raise the corner of her mouth. Lingfeng, I have given up. In the future, I will not pester you anymore. You are like the wind. Perhaps the vast world belongs to you. I'm not the kind of person who pesters endlessly. From now on, you will have a beautiful woman by your side. I hope you will be safe and sound for the rest of your life. Too tired, chasing after a gust of wind, unable to catch it, unable to keep up. Duguqing slowly opened her mouth. Her eyes looked past him, looking at the endless blue sky behind him. Her words caused Lingfeng's pupils to shrink abruptly. Her sad and calm expression, for some reason, made him feel a strange emotion. This was a feeling he had never felt before. He told himself that she was a good girl. For her to take the initiative to give up, it could not be better. He did not need to worry about holding her back. So he put away all his complicated emotions and seriously looked at Duguqing, sincerely apologizing. Sorry, I should not have taken the initiative to provoke you that day, causing you to like a heartless person. Me liking you is my matter. It has nothing to do with you. That day on the street, if you did not approach me, maybe the next time I met you, my heart would also be moved. Because you're the type I like, a step earlier or a step later, there's no difference. After saying this, Duguqing felt that the heavy stone in her heart could finally be removed. Lingfeng did not think she would say this. For a moment, he did not know how to respond. All right, I won't disturb your sword practice. I'm going back to my room first. If she kept talking, it would only make things awkward for both sides. Since she said it was the beginning, then let her finish it. She used all her strength to raise a smile and waved her hand at him. Falling in love with a wild horse. It was a pity that her home did not have a grassland. She turned around, tears falling. Just leave it like this. Her heart did not hurt at all. It did not hurt at all. Lingfeng stood there in a daze, watching her leave step by step. There was a voice in his heart shouting, keep her, keep her. He turned a deaf ear. Just leave it like this. Chapter 491. Chu Qingyan summoned Turin and explained that she wanted to find Tang Qingchong. Turin ordered the Zephyr cavalry to investigate without a word. Soon, there was news. Tang Qingchong was in the plum blossom forest in the west of the capital. Chu Qingyan tapped her fingers on the table as a smile appeared on her face. Very good. Let's go to the plum blossom forest. The E-Residence's carriage was very efficient. She arrived at the plum blossom forest in less than half an hour. It was the cold winter and the best time for plum blossoms to bloom. There were many people who came out to admire the plum blossoms. But with the Zephyr cavalry's guidance, she quickly found Tang Qingchong, who was drinking alone in a quiet corner. Every time she saw him, he was drinking alone. Chu Qingyan was angry and amused at the same time. Did this person really think that he could drown his sorrows by drinking? These were just self-deceiving words. Second young Master Tang, how long do you plan to be depressed? Chu Qingyan did not hold back. She walked in front of him and hit the nail on the head. His drinking mood was interrupted. Tang Qingchong raised his head and saw a beautiful girl standing in front of him. He did not know her, but he seemed to have some impression of her. Who are you? He put down his wine cup and looked at her with a frown. You don't need to know who I am, but I know who you are, why you're drinking, and who you care about. Chu Qingyan was standing and he was sitting, so she looked down at him. Tang Qingchong's expression suddenly turned cold. This one doesn't know what nonsense you're talking about. If you want to admire the plum blossoms here, this one can give up the place to you. As he spoke, Tang Qingchong stood up. The plum blossoms on his body followed his movements and fell to the ground. The person in front of her was as handsome as a painting. Chu Qingyan had to admit that Jiang Yunyao had good taste. Tang Qingchong could be considered one of the most handsome men in the capital. You like Jiang Yunyao, don't you? Chu Qingyin did not stop him and spoke directly. Sometimes, words were more useful than actions. Tang Qingchong was about to leave, but he paused because of her words. His eyes flashed with embarrassment from being seen through, but when he turned to look at her, his emotions were gone. Who are you? Who am I? I'm a middleman who is here to seek justice for Jiang Yunyao. I'm also a busybody who wants to play matchmaker. Chu Qingyin crossed her arms and looked at him calmly. Miss, if you have something to say, just say it. Tang Qingchong suddenly recalled that she was the little girl who had accompanied Jiao today. He did not sense any malice from her. Tang Qingchong could not help but relax his brows and said calmly. Chu Qingyin nodded silently. She did not fly into a rage out of humiliation and leave immediately. It was obvious that she recognized Jiang Yunyao as well. It seemed like it was not that he did not have feelings for Jiang Yunyao. He just did not show it. Imagine a living person jumping around in front of you for more than 10 years. How could you not have any feelings for her? Even iron and stone? Chu Qingyin did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Do you know that after the wedding last year, she fell ill? As soon as she said this, she saw him frown. Chu Qingyin knew that he did not know. She did not give him a chance to answer and continued to ask. Then it's even more impossible for you to know that she was poisoned by someone and was bedridden until the day before yesterday. She was tortured for almost 2 years. Chu Qingyin's bright eyes stared into his shocked eyes. Also, if she was not found in time, she might have turned into a wisp of soul by now. What's going on? Why is there no news from the Imperial Palace? Tang Qingchong went forward and wanted to grab Chu Qingyin to ask, but he was stopped by the black-clothed man. He could only stare at Chu Qingyin with red eyes. Chu Qingyin looked at the man who had been so elegant and cool just a moment ago. Now, he had lost control of himself. The pain in his eyes was real. She sighed. It was another couple who loved each other, but one was sad and desperate, and the other did not dare to admit it. They almost parted ways. Thus, Chu Qingyin did not waste any more time. She immediately told him everything that had happened to Jiang Yunyao. After listening to Chu Qingyin's story, Tang Qingchong turned around and punched the plum blossom tree. The plum blossoms fell down, but there were more emotions in his eyes. Regret, pain, pity, self-blame, and longing flashed in his eyes. It was so fast that even Chu Qingyin could not catch it. After a moment of silence, Tang Qingchong immediately turned to Chu Qingyin and said, "Thank you for telling me. I will repay you in the future. I have something important to do, so I will leave first." Chu Qingyin looked at the figure in the distance and raised the corner of her mouth. It was up to him whether he could succeed in holding her hand. "Come on, Jiu Er's eternal day." Your Highness, bad news. Second young Master Tang wants to see you. He is now at the entrance of the palace. Ru Yue ran over breathlessly. Jiang Yunyao, who was writing with a brush, paused and a drop of thick ink fell on the white paper. Him? Why did he come to see her? Did she want to see him? If she did not see him because she wanted to avoid him, there would be many opportunities to meet him in the future. Did she want to hide from him forever? Take him to Lisan Pavilion and prepare tea and snacks. I will go there now. Jiang Yunyao put away the brush and was a little dazed. Although she had seen him once today, she had lost control of her emotions when she came back. Now her eyes were red and swollen. Would she be ugly? Thinking of this, Jiang Yunyao smiled bitterly. He did not like her. It was the same whether she was ugly or not in his eyes. She might as well not add makeup to cover it up. Out of the bedroom, Jiang Yunyao cheered herself up. Come on, you can do it. But when she saw the figure with his back to her, Jiang Yunyao could not help but stop. What should she do? She still could not face him calmly. How could she give up on more than 10 years of feelings just like that? Just when Jiang Yunyao was hesitating and did not dare to go forward, Tang Qingchong, who had sensed movement behind him, turned around and saw a somewhat panicked person. He was slightly stunned. The person that he had been thinking about day and night and did not dare to forget was standing in front of him. There was an indescribable joy in his heart. But when he saw the resistance and hesitation in her eyes, it was like a huge wave that hit him to the bottom of the valley. That's right, it hurt her too deeply. That unbridled smile on her face had completely vanished. In the past, she was the one who took the initiative. Now, it was his turn to go forward. Tang Qingchong walked towards her step by step, slowly shortening the distance between them. Xiao. Suddenly hearing him call her by her childhood name, Jiang Yunyao instantly raised her head and met his affectionate eyes. She was stunned. Did she see wrongly? Why was there such deep affection in his eyes? I'm sorry, I was wrong. Where were you wrong? I was wrong in every way. Jiang Yunyao was so frightened that she was stuttering. Was the person in front of her possessed? This was too abnormal. Should she ask Master Su Jian to chant scriptures to exorcise him? Chapter 492. What? Jiang Yunyao felt that she was hallucinating. The person in front of her was not Yongri, but a moving tree. The shock on Jiang Yunyao's face reminded Tang Qingchong of her adorable look in the past. He couldn't help but smile. It turned out that he had already fallen in love with her, but he had been deceiving himself all this time. Jiao, I apologize. I'm late. I'm late for a year, 8 months and 10 days, he said seriously. Jiang Yunyao didn't understand. I was proud and arrogant back then. I thought that my pride was hurt because I was coerced and used. Now that I think about it, if I could choose again, I wouldn't go against my heart. In front of the person I like, all status and dignity are not worth mentioning. He looked at her affectionately, his eyes filled with the feelings that were buried deep in his heart. Yongri, do you know what you're saying? Jiang Yunyao was a little dizzy. She only felt that his mouth was opening and closing, but she couldn't catch what he was saying. Wait, you said, in front of the person you like? Jiang Yunyao opened her mouth slightly, her eyes dazed. Did she hear wrongly? She stuttered as she pointed at herself. You said you like me? Me? Tang Qingchong sighed. After so many years, she was still so stupid. He had already said it so bluntly. But who asked him to fall in love with such an adorable girl? Tang Qingchong's eyebrows and eyes were slightly curved. He took a step forward and walked to her. He reached out his hand and stroked her cheek. Her thin cheeks had lost their previous chubbiness, but it didn't matter. He would soon bring her back. Jiao, Tang Qingchong, have already had you in my heart since a long time ago. It's just that I was slow to react and cared too much about a man's face. So I foolishly missed you for so many years. If he had told her earlier, if he had done a little more to discover his feelings, would they have been happy long ago? Yongri, am I dreaming? But when we got married, your expression clearly told me that you were forced to marry me. You didn't marry me willingly. At that time, I was very sad, very sad. I feel like all the feelings I've invested in for so many years have all gone down the drain. Jiang Yunyao blinked her reddened eyes and tugged at her sleeves sadly. Her heart was in a mess at the moment. She felt that her entire life had undergone an earth-shattering change ever since she was cured of the poison. First, it was her cousin's betrayal. Then he became strange. She felt that she could no longer bear any more changes. Her doubts and uncertainty made Tang Qingchong's heart clench. After all, she had been hurt too deeply by him. That was why she was so cautious, not daring to believe or hope. What should I do and say to make you believe me? Tang Qingchong couldn't help but pull the person in front of him into his arms. His movements were gentle, and his expression was tender. This was not the first time the two of them had been in such close contact. When they were young, she had caused a lot of trouble, and he had always been the one to clean up the mess. When she was injured or frightened, she had always been in his arms. At that time, as they grew up, there was already a boundary between men and women in their hearts, and they rarely did it again. Now that they were hugging each other again, the two young bodies were shocked. Tang Qingchong felt that when he hugged her, a hole in his heart that had been missing was now filled. He couldn't help but say emotionally, Jiao, do you know that after you left, I felt regret? I regretted not following my heart at that time. Let me tell you, I was willing to marry you. There was no news of you for a month, 2 months, and no news of you for a year. At that time, I really wanted to barge into the palace to look for you. But when I reached the palace gates, I retreated, because I remembered your resolute words that day. I was afraid that when I saw you again, you would have already forgotten about me. Who would have known that the fearless, noble young master in the eyes of the common people would also start to feel afraid one day? Every night, he would wake up with a start in the middle of the night. His eyes were red, and his heart was torn. Perhaps, from today onwards, no one would ever call him Yongri again. Under her palms was his real body temperature, and in her arms was a familiar scent. Only now did Jiang Yunyao truly believe that the person in front of her was the real Yongri and not a figment of her imagination. Hearing him dissect her heart word by word, Jiang Yunyao couldn't help but cry out loud. "You scoundrel! Do you know that I was just one step away from letting go? Love that can't be reciprocated, it's very, very lonely. You know that what I'm most afraid of is walking alone. I don't dare to imagine what I would do if I was the only one left for the rest of the journey. In the past year, I often thought that if I could have you by my side in this life, no matter how many grievances and pain I suffered, I couldn't bear for you to bear. Even if I lost face, could it compare to your smile?" Tang Qingchong tightened his arms and choked with sobs. In this life, he had decided that his Jiao would never change. Yongri, Jiang Yunyao, was in tears. She originally thought that they would part ways, but in the end, he suddenly appeared in front of her and told her that he liked her. This was enough to make her go crazy with joy. So, he slowly let go of the person in front of him and held her shoulders with both hands. He asked seriously, word by word, "I like you. I want to marry you. Are you willing to marry me?" At this moment in the residence, in the tightly shut room, a beautiful figure sat on a chair. The tea in front of her had been left out for a long time and was no longer steaming. This entire afternoon, she did nothing but sit there in a daze. It was laughable. At this moment, she should have many things to do, such as contacting her imperial father and empress mother, or searching for her younger brother. But she couldn't help but recall the words that person said to her in the courtyard over and over again. She had been moved before, but that was only in the past. Tears overflowed once again. She had clearly said not to cry, but she couldn't help it. Suddenly, a soft sound came from the window. Du Guqing immediately wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, then quickly walked over and opened the window to let the person in. "Princess, an urgent secret report from the imperial city." The spy presented a letter. There were 3 red lines. It was a matter of utmost urgency. Du Guqing couldn't care about her feelings at this moment and immediately opened it to read. After reading it, she was stunned on the spot. His Majesty had been assassinated by thieves and died from serious injuries. The Crown Prince had been assassinated and his life was unknown. Within a day, the world had turned upside down. Why did this happen? Who did it? Du Guqing knelt on the ground weakly, tears surging out of her eyes. Her fingers trembled as she held the letter. Her vision was already turning white and dizzy. "Princess, you can't fall. The Empress is still waiting for you to go back and preside over the situation." The spy immediately supported her and said sadly, "I want to go back." These were the only words left in her mind at this moment. "Princess, everything is ready. Okay, return to Shang country." At the same time, Xiao Su received another letter from Huo Ling from Shang country, saying that he had found the whereabouts of the love grass. Chapter 493. In the garden, Tang Qingchong was waiting for Jiang Yinyao's reply. Although he knew that she still had him in her heart, he wasn't sure how much was left compared to the past. The longer she remained silent, the more uneasy he felt. "Yongri, I'm very happy that what you said to me just now let me know that all my efforts were not in vain." Jiang Yunyao slowly raised her head. The tears in her eyes had receded, but one could still see the surging emotions in her red eyes. But when he heard Jiang Yunyao's words, Tang Qingchong's heart suddenly sank. "However, for the past year or so, I've been lying in bed, facing nightmares and illnesses every day. At that time, I really wanted you to be by my side, but you didn't. Later on, I was disappointed. In the end, I felt even more despair. I thought about a lot of things. Perhaps, for two people to be together forever, other than mutual love, there are also many other factors, such as fate and luck. Back then, we had already missed each other. Perhaps this is God's arrangement. Let's just go with the flow. Jiang Yinyao smiled and looked at the person in front of her seriously. She had liked this man for a long time. For as long as she could remember, she liked to follow behind him. She had been ignored, pushed away, and hurt. Maybe she was too narrow-minded. Every time she thought about the past, she felt more sad than happy. Maybe it was because she had thought about many things while lying in bed for more than a year and left his circle. Only then did she know that without him, she could be strong and walk on. The person in front of her was undoubtedly outstanding, but it wasn't that she hadn't met anyone who was more outstanding than him. It was just that he had a place in her heart. So no matter how good the others were, they couldn't compare to the person in front of her. But all of this was in the past. Xiao's indifference and gentleness didn't make Tang Qingchang feel relaxed. Instead, it made him panic. When someone needed you, it proved that you still had a place in her heart. But when she didn't need you, it meant that you were no longer important. He didn't want to be a dispensable person in Xiao's life. Xiao, are you still angry with me? Tang Qingchang looked in her eyes, his voice trembling. No matter what answer she gave, he was afraid. If she resented him, it proved that he still existed in her heart. If she didn't resent him, it meant that she had already seen through their relationship. Jiang Yinyao didn't know how to answer Tang Qingchang's question. She turned her head to look at the impatiens beside her. At this moment, the flowers were blooming brilliantly. Yongri, I don't think this is a matter of resentment. There are many things between the two of us that are beyond our control. For example, my father used the sweet dew of the 9 sons as a bargaining chip in the marriage alliance. For example, Yutong plotted against me. And I have also done many wrong things. If I had talked to you nicely instead of breaking off the engagement on the spot, if you hadn't gone against your conscience and been honest with me, if you had come to the palace to visit me once while I was gone. At this point, she raised her head again, her eyes filled with sorrow. Would we not have missed each other for so long? Jiang Yinyao's words caused Tang Qingchang to be unable to help but close his eyes, and he hid the pain in the depths of his eyes. If there was no anger, no arrogance, no hesitation, would it be different today? Jiao, I'm sorry for hurting you so deeply. Can you give me a chance to make it up to you? Tang Qingchang reached out to caress her cheek. The icy aura in the eyes of others had already disappeared. At this moment, he was very careful. He was afraid that he would make a mistake if he took a step forward, and afraid that she would disappear if he took a step back. Today, he had already told her everything. As long as she didn't run away in the following days, he would have a way to restore her confidence in him. Yongri, Jiang Yinyao was speechless. I'm too stupid. Are you still willing to have me? The current Xiao was already different from the past. He couldn't force her to do anything now, otherwise it would be counterproductive. However, he couldn't just let her go like this. He couldn't be blamed for being impatient because he had already tasted the feeling of losing her once. He didn't want her to disappear from his life again. His words caused Jiang Yinyao's heart to tremble. She looked at him in disbelief. Was this still the high and mighty, silent and cold Yongri she had met before? He was the person she admired and loved the most. How could she not be moved when she heard his words? However, clap, clap, clap. A round of applause suddenly sounded in the quiet garden. Jiang Yinyao and Tang Qingchang both looked towards the source of the sound. They saw a mischievous person lying on the rockery, looking down at them from above. Third princess, that's enough. Don't scare her away when the time comes. Chu Qingyan winked at her, her eyes full of mischief. Tang Qingchang was confused when he heard that. Jiao, who was in front of him, blushed and was no longer as indifferent as before. She retorted softly, "Didn't you teach me all this?" All right. It's all my fault. Third princess is magnanimous, so please don't be calculative with Qingyan. Chu Qingyan was all smiles. There wasn't any apology on her face. However, Tang Qingchang understood something. He suddenly said, "Jiao, did this young lady teach you all those words just now?" Jiang Yunyao felt that there was something wrong with his words. Her eyes started to wander. That Chu Qingyin saw that the situation was not good and immediately slipped away. "Well, third princess, second young master Tang, you two have a good chat. Qingyin won't accompany you. I'm leaving." Before Jiang Yunyao could say anything, the darkened face of the person in front of her made her panic. Looking at the helpless person in front of him, Tang Qingchong's heart softened. He reached out and pulled her back into his arms. He sighed softly, and then his words were filled with the joy and relief of regaining what he had lost. "Jiao, fortunately, we made it in time. Fortunately, you were still here when I woke up. This was already a blessing from the heavens." "You're not angry anymore?" Jiang Yunyao asked softly. "No. Now and in the future, I won't be angry with you. As long as you stay by my side," he said gently. Jiang Yunyao was speechless. Normally, she was a person of few words, but now that she had opened her mouth, her sweet words flowed out like water, as if they were free. However, she liked it. However, Jiang Yunyao didn't know that once a man was enlightened, he couldn't be looked at with ordinary eyes. For example, at this moment, Tang Qingchong suddenly let go of her. While she was still confused, he held her face and inched closer to her. When the golden wind and the jade dew met, it was better than countless things in the world. At this moment, the flowers turned their backs shyly. Only the two figures cuddling together became the most beautiful scenery in this garden. Chapter 494. On the same day that Jiang Yinyao's poison was cured, Jiang Xiong invited Xiao Su, Chu Qingyin, and the others to a banquet. Due to their identities, this banquet did not alert anyone. Instead, it was held in the palace in a low-key but not simple manner. Although there were only a dozen people, they still gathered around a large table. The delicacies were delicious, and the aroma of wine lingered in the air. At this time, the moon was bright, the clouds were light, and the scenery was picturesque. The beautiful scenery was a feast for the heart. Jiang Xiong raised his wine cup, full of smiles, and said to Cheng Yinluo, "Miss Cheng, thank you for saving Jiao. This toast is to you." Cheng Yinluo quickly raised her wine cup to return the gesture. After drinking the first cup, Jiang Xiong raised his second cup. He looked at Chu Qingyin with faint admiration in his eyes. "Miss Chu, since ancient times, heroes come from the young. You're an intelligent girl. With you by the King of England's side, it's like adding wings to a tiger. Your Majesty is overpraising her. She's just a little clever." Xiao Su replied indifferently. "She's so young, but she's so outstanding. Her future won't be bad. Come, let us toast Miss Chu." Because his daughter's poison was cured and he gained a lover, Jiang Xiong was very happy. It was rare for him to be full of praise for Chu Qingyin. Xiao Su took the wine cup in front of Chu Qingyin and said on her behalf, "She can't drink. This prince will drink on her behalf." Jiang Xiong had no objection to his action. On the contrary, Chu Qingyin was a little depressed. "I can't drink, but I can use tea in place of wine." After drinking the wine, Xiao Su heard the little fellow's complaints. His expression softened, but his tone carried a hint of preaching. "Do you know that we're leaving tomorrow? Do you think you'll be able to sleep after drinking tea tonight?" Chu Qingyin thought about it and agreed. She pushed the teapot on the table away and focused on eating the dishes in front of her. "His Royal Highness is really good at teaching his wife. My two sons are already at the age of marriage, yet they still haven't brought their wives back to meet me. I'm so envious that Miss Chu is getting along so well with His Royal Highness. Why don't we?" Empress Jiang was complaining about her two sons' incompetence. Crown Prince Jiang Yunli calmly ate his food, emptying his mind so that he could turn a deaf ear. The second prince, Jiang Yunjing, immediately picked up his wine cup to cover his mouth, hoping that his mother would not be entangled in this issue. However, the empress was influenced by the interaction between Chu Qingyin and Xiao Su. She could not help but look at her two sons. They were not bad either. They were capable of ruling the country. Why did anyone want them? Then, Empress Jiang rolled her eyes and said something that made everyone and the two princes vomit blood. Why don't I find a girl like Miss Chu for the two of you? The braised pork in Chu Qingyin's mouth fell out. This was too sudden. Jiang Yunyao ate silently. She did not hear anything. Jiang Xiong face-bombed. His wife came out to embarrass him again. But it was good that she liked it. Crown Prince Jiang Yunli's face turned green because he accidentally choked on the vegetables just now. The second prince, Jiang Yunjing, who was always modest and polite, started coughing without caring about his image. He choked on the wine. Among the people present, only Xiao Su was not affected. He calmly picked up a piece of braised pork and put it into Chu Qingyin's bowl. Mother, there are outsiders here. Be careful with your words. His Highness the Crown Prince finally managed to catch his breath and stopped his imperial mother before she could say anything else that would shock the heavens and make the earth weep. It did not matter if they embarrassed themselves in front of their own family. But now, they were thrown out of the country. Their image did not matter, but they had to improve their mother's image. However, the Empress Jiang did not understand her eldest son's good intentions. She looked surprised. Isn't it popular to cultivate a daughter-in-law now? Since you are not in a hurry, you should settle down first. Anyway, you can look at her, but can't eat her. You should be anxious. Oh, this empress is so down-to-earth. Chu Qingyin clicked her tongue and thought. Jiang Yunyao covered her face. I really did not hear anything. Jiang Xiong thought. Should he end the banquet early? The crown prince sighed. Father, please control mother. The second prince thought. Could he choose to leave the banquet early? Only Xiao Su, who was standing at the side, really heard what he said. He thoughtfully looked at the person beside him. Was he in a hurry to get what he wanted? Little guy, when will you be of marriageable age? Chu Qingyin, who was engrossed in watching the show, did not pay attention to Xiao Su's strange question. She casually replied, in a few days, it will be 11. It will take another 4 years. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes. For years, more than 1,400 days. The Empress Jiang was right. Forget it. Let's cultivate her slowly. No hurry. Wait a minute. Xiao Su frowned. When did he suddenly have this strange idea? Could it be that he drank too much? Xiao Su held his forehead, trying to get rid of the discordant thoughts in his mind. At this moment, Chu Qingyin finished watching the show. She turned and saw that there was something wrong with the big ice cube. His eyes were a little dazed. She could not help but ask, Big Ice Cube, did you drink too much? Xiao Su came back to his senses when he heard the little guy's words. He looked at the little guy who was looking at him with a serious smile. His heart skipped a beat, as if something was sprouting in his heart. Maybe it was not the wine that was drunk, but the person. The wine was not drunk, but the person was drunk. Halfway through the banquet, Tang Qingchong raised his wine glass and said to Chu Qingyin, Miss Chu, thank you for your help in resolving the misunderstanding between me and Jiao. Let me give you this toast. I will finish it. You can do whatever you want. There were no outsiders at the banquet today, but Tang Qingchong was invited. Jiang Xiong must have recognized him as his son-in-law. Chu Qingyin raised her cup of warm water and said to the two of them, Third princess, second young master Tang, I was merely moving my lips. The real reason is because the feelings you have for each other did not fade with the passage of time. Instead, they have deepened. I wish the two of you a happy marriage. Happiness is like wine, getting better and better. This little girl is really good at talking. Your Majesty, let's find wives for little Li and little Jing. The Empress Jiang was still thinking about the idea just now. Shuer, eat. Jiang Xiong immediately changed the topic. Little Li and little Jing? Chu Qingyin looked at the two handsome princes beside her. It was hard to imagine that they had such nicknames. It seemed that their mother really loved them deeply. The banquet was coming to an end. Jiang Xiong put down his wine glass and looked at Xiao Su and the others. He smiled and said, I know you are leaving tomorrow. Before you leave, I have a gift for you. It is what you have been looking for. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.